the scent of wet earth and fertilizer mixed surprisingly with the soft fragrance of a freshly picked Darwin hybrid. I leaned in, using my worn gloves to protect my hands as I cut the stem of a golden yellow tulip. The 9 o'clock sun beat down strongly, but the fresh morning air still offered a welcome reprieve to the greenhouse. Flor de Cidade, city flower. That was what the neighbors called the 10-hectare plot of land surprisingly nestled within the urban limits of Curitiba. Surrounded by ancient walls and tall trees that muffled the city noise, it was a small refuge of rich soil and cold climate that, against all odds, I had transformed into a thriving tulip farm. For the past 7 years, every square inch had been cultivated with the stubbornness and passion of someone who traded a degree in civil engineering for a life soiled with earth. My specialty? Rare varieties. Not the common triumph found in any supermarket, but the exotic parrot, the imposing striped Rembrandt, and, currently, the double early which were at peak bloom. Their beauty was ephemeral yet fierce, lasting little more than a week in their full splendor before wilting. My job was to time this perfection, harvesting the buds at precisely the right moment and packing them with the care of jewels. I stepped away from the workbench, pulling off the dirt-stained bandana that held my light brown hair. My flannel coat, too thick for the season but necessary for the cold greenhouse mornings, was covered in remnants of moss and soil. Isla. The Blooms truck is here for the Phoenix order. The loud voice of Seu João, my sole full-time employee and property guardian, echoed from outside. I'm coming. My back cracked in protest. The Phoenix order was not just another delivery, it was my leap of faith. Phoenix was the city's most influential holding company, owned by the Vasconcelos family. They were hosting a charity gala for the inauguration of their new skyscraper, an event that would be the pinnacle of the social season. I had secured the contract through a recommendation from an older supplier, and the order's value, 5 figures, more than my last 6 months' revenue combined, was the capital I desperately needed to finalize the construction of my new winter greenhouse. I wiped my muddy boots on a rubber mat and stepped out of the greenhouse into the morning light. The white florist's van was parked near the packing barn, and a driver in a neat uniform waited patiently. Good morning, Ms. Braga, he said, with the professional courtesy of someone who had made dozens of collections here. Good morning, Cicero. All set. I guided him to the barn. There, arranged in buckets of fresh water, were hundreds of tulips. Most were a deep velvet red, the queen of the night variety mixed with salmon and a bold touch of burgundy. The combination was dramatic, luxurious, and perfect for the Phoenix aesthetic. Magnificent, as always, Cicero murmured, picking up a clipboard. As he checked the inventory, another, much sleeker pickup truck with tinted windows silently pulled up at the end of the dirt track. It was not a commercial vehicle. It was expensive, discreet, and screamed money. Do we have a visitor, Seu João? I asked, frowning. I hadn't scheduled any meetings for today. No, girl. And I don't like the look of that car. Seu João approached me, gripping the hoe handle tightly. The driver's side door opened slowly, and a man stepped out. Tall, with the elegant posture of a model and the confidence of a CEO. He wore a bespoke navy suit that, for some reason, looked ridiculous in my rural setting, but which he wore with complete naturalness. His leather shoes, well, I doubted they had ever seen mud. Ms. Isla Braga? His voice was deep, polished, and carried a southern accent that bordered on arrogance. Yes, that's me. I stepped forward, adjusting my apron. Suddenly, I was very conscious of the dirt stain on my knee. Can I help you? He walked towards me, carefully avoiding the muddy patches on the path. His beauty was undeniable, dark, well-cut hair, a strong jawline, and eyes of such an intense brown they looked almost black under the sun. He was the type of man who would turn heads in a fancy restaurant, but here, in the middle of my tulips, he looked like a suited intruder. My name is Mateus Vasconcelos, he said, extending his impeccable hand. I am responsible for the coordination of the Phoenix launch gala. His name hit me. Vasconcelos. The heir. I had only dealt with his assistant, Lucia. I shook his hand. His was warm, dry, and incredibly firm, contrasting with mine, which was rough and had short nails. It's a pleasure, Mr. Vasconcelos. I thought everything was settled with Lucia. The order is being loaded right now. Lucia handles the logistics, Ms. Braga. I handle the curation. His smile was cold, it didn't reach his eyes. I received your samples, and I must be honest, the flowers are stunning. The velvet red is exactly what I asked for. But... He paused dramatically, and his gaze swept over the small farm, the rustic barn, the polycarbonate-covered greenhouses, the compost pile in the distance, with ill-concealed disapproval. But what, Mr. Vasconcelos? My voice hardened. But I am here to ensure that the origin of our flowers is as impeccable as their appearance. For an event of our caliber, we cannot have last-minute surprises. And, frankly, this place is quite rustic. I felt the heat rising in my neck. This property is not rustic, it's organic. And it is within these ancient walls, with this soil and these greenhouses, that I produce the rarest tulips in southern Brazil. No city florist can come close to the quality of my winter bulb. I don't doubt your talent, Ms. Braga. But I doubt your capacity to handle the scale of my event. He ignored Cicero and the boxes of tulips being loaded and turned to look at the greenhouse. Is this where they come from? May I take a look at your process? His curiosity felt more like a forced inspection. He wanted to invade my sanctuary. The greenhouses are restricted to staff, Mr. Vasconcelos. It's a controlled and sensitive environment. Don't be ridiculous. He started walking towards the greenhouse door. Your contract includes a quality assurance clause. I am here to ensure you don't have an unexpected pest or fungus that could jeopardize a six-figure investment. What he said was true. The inspection clause was there, worded in terrible legal terms that I hadn't fully understood at the time. He was using it. Fine, I conceded, gritting my teeth. But the boots have to stay outside. He gave me a look that said, "You must be joking." I'm serious, I insisted. Contaminant control is strict. Either you take those designer shoes off, or you don't come in. Mateus Vasconcelos stopped, looking at his glossy black leather shoes, then at the dirty rubber mat. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something beyond arrogance in his eyes. Hesitation. With an audible sigh of resignation, he bent down and took off his shoes, revealing gray socks that looked like they were made of fine silk. He placed the shoes carefully under a shrub. Don't get the socks dirty, he instructed, as if I were to blame for the existence of the dirt. All right, Mr. Curator, I replied, opening the greenhouse door with unnecessary force. Be quick. And don't touch anything. We went inside. The smell of peat, humidity, and the sweetness of the tulips immediately enveloped him. He looked around, his eyes wide with ill-contained surprise, at the hundreds of clay pots lined up in rows, with tulip buds of all colors reaching up to the glass roof. Impressive, he admitted, his voice slightly lower. It's much bigger than it looks from the outside. It's a 10-hectare farm, Mr. Vasconcelos. The city grew around it, not the other way around. He moved down the narrow aisle, his shoulders tense. His eyes were no longer filled with disdain, but with an intense curiosity. He stopped beside a bucket of seedlings I was preparing for the next crop. What is this? Parrot? The shape is different. I was surprised he knew the name. It's a parrot green wave, yes. One of my favorites. Its edge is scalloped, and the petals look like feathers. They look very delicate. They are. I felt an instinctive need to defend them. It's their nature. Intense, yet fragile beauty. It requires a care that most growers avoid because it's not mass efficient. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a genuine, not just professional, interest in his dark eyes. You treat them like works of art. They are. He stepped closer to me, and the distance between us and the narrow greenhouse suddenly became very small. The scent of his expensive cologne, sandalwood and something more bitter, perhaps leather, mixed with my perfume of earth and leaves. "Tell me, Miss Braga," he said, his voice a whisper. "Did you always know you wanted to breed tulips in the middle of the city, or is this a late-onset rebellion?" I laughed, a short, humorless sound. "It's not a rebellion, Mr. Vasconcelos. It's a vocation. And excuse me, I need to get back to work. Is your inspection finished?" Mateus took another step, forcing me to back up until my back was against the cold shelves of pots. His shadow covered me, and the heat I felt had nothing to do with the sun in the greenhouse. "Almost," he said, his gaze fixed on mine, and the intensity in his eyes was the same I had seen in Marcus Thornton's photos at my old job. "I just needed to be sure of one thing." He extended his hand, and I froze, expecting him to inspect the flowers. Instead, his fingers brushed lightly against my cheek, sweeping away a small fragment of peat from my face. The touch was brief, but it left a trail of electricity. "There," he murmured, and the glint in his eyes was something I couldn't decipher. "Impeccable. As my flowers should be." He stepped away, leaving me disoriented. Mateus Vasconcelos walked out of the greenhouse, put on his shiny shoes, and said nothing to Cicero about the inspection, just a nod. "I'll call Lucia. Payment will be processed immediately. Have a good afternoon, Ms. Braga." He got into the car and drove away, kicking up a small cloud of dust on the dirt road that Cicero, the driver, would have to wait for to settle. What a man! Su Joao shook his head, spitting on the ground. Arrogant. Arrogant and dangerous, I corrected, still feeling the tension on my cheek. I didn't know him, but the Vasconcelos heir wasn't here just to inspect flowers. He was here to inspect me, to measure me, and to give me a warning. His world was colliding with mine, and he didn't mind getting his hands, or his socks, dirty to take control. I took a deep breath, inhaling the smell of earth, ignoring the faint trace of sandalwood. I had the new greenhouse to build. I didn't have time for games with spoiled heirs. Or so I told myself. The trail of sandalwood and dust kicked up by Mateus Vasconcelos's car took a long time to dissipate. I rested my forehead against the cool glass of the greenhouse, trying to use the clarity of my workplace to dispel the fog he had left behind. Su Joao continued to grumble about the audacity of the suit-wearing playboy for having dared to step on Flor de Cidade's soil. But I barely heard him. Mateus's casual touch on my cheek, the removal of a fragment of dirt, had been more disturbing than any criticism of my rusticity. It was an act of unsolicited intimacy, a boundary crossed under the guise of courtesy. He wasn't interested in fungi or pests, he was interested in control. Still, the contract was secure. I spent the rest of the morning immersed in the frenzy of harvesting and processing. The Phoenix payments had indeed been processed in record time. Lucia called an hour after Mateus left to confirm the transfer. The balance was enough to cover the materials for the new winter greenhouse and hire the assembly team. Mateus's money gave me freedom. The problem was that he seemed to think the money gave him ownership. That afternoon, while I was in the packing area, arranging parrot buds in tissue paper for a smaller florist, my cell phone vibrated with a delivery notification. It wasn't a supplier. It was a downtown restaurant. I opened the barn door to find a delivery man standing there with a sturdy cardboard box and a tablet for a signature. "Delivery for Lia Braga, from Flor de Cidade," he said, hurried. "I didn't order anything," I said, confused. I didn't have time for a fancy lunch, let alone to order one. It's complimentary, ma'am. No charge. He handed me the box, which was heavy and incredibly cold. Inside, nestled in layers of dry ice and black tissue paper, was a single tulip. It wasn't one of mine. It was a mustard green moutarde variety, a rugged, exotic, almost ugly, but intensely rare flower. Next to it was a simple Vasconcelos holding business card, no logo, just his name embossed. The message, handwritten in an elegant, sloping script, was short. Similar, but not the same. A moutarde tulip to remind you that there's always something bolder out there. MV. I felt my stomach sink. MV, Mateus Vasconcelos. He was sending me flowers. But not the ones I produced. He was sending a challenge, a presumptuous comment on my collection, and, worse, he had found my personal farm address for delivery. Send it back, I told the delivery man. Ma'am, I can't. My order is just to deliver. He was already backing away, returning to his motorcycle. I slammed the door and stared at the tulip. The flower was beautiful in its own way, but his presumption was infuriating. He used the inspection to get my address, and now he was subtly reminding me of his superior position. He was the curator, the one who dictated good taste, and I, the florist in the dirt, was just another piece in his game. That night, I was exhausted. I had spent the entire afternoon with the contractors, marking the lines for the new greenhouse. I barely had time to shower before my cell phone rang. It was a blocked number. Hello? Good evening, Isla. Mateus's voice was unmistakable. Low, soft, but with an edge of authority that made me grip the phone tighter. Mr. Vasconcelos. How did you get this number? Don't be naive. Your business number is on the contract, and your cell phone is linked to it. I got it. I'm glad you received my delivery. The gift. I tried to sound as indifferent as possible. You didn't need to. I'll send the moutarde back tomorrow. You won't, he countered, without hesitation. It's at its peak beauty now. Beauty is fleeting, Isla. You should enjoy it while it's there. Besides, I don't care about the cost. I care about my taste. And your taste is to send expensive, unsolicited gifts to your suppliers' home addresses? No. My taste is to ensure that the woman providing the most important flowers for my event feels valued. There was a small pause. It's the first time I've felt compelled to inspect a supplier in person, Isla. You intrigued me. I'm a florist, Mr. Vasconcelos. Not a puzzle. Both require deciphering. And I'm good at deciphering. You know, the light in your greenhouse, late in the afternoon, transforms the queen of the night. They look almost black, they're so deep. It's a dramatic effect. You have exceptional lighting control. I was speechless. He hadn't spent 5 full minutes in the greenhouse. How did he notice the lighting? Had he come back? I appreciate your lighting feedback, I said, tense. But that doesn't change the fact that you're acting inappropriately. If you have any concerns about the contract or logistics, please contact Lucia. It's not about logistics. It's about you. His voice lowered. You're a woman who lives covered in dirt to create the most delicate beauty. You traded a career in concrete for a life of petals. That's not just a vocation, Isla. That's raw passion. And passion attracts me. You're projecting, Mr. Vasconcelos. I'm just a businesswoman. You were lying. The businesswoman wouldn't have blushed when I touched her face. The businesswoman wouldn't have defended the greenhouse as if it were an intimate secret. You have thorns, Isla Braga. And I'm a man who loves a challenge. His nickname from the day, Mr. Curator, came to mind. There's no challenge, Mateus. I have a business to run. You have an empire to sustain. Our relationship is purely transactional. Are you sure about that? The silence on the other end of the line was heavy, filled with expectation. My heart was pounding in my chest, a beat too loud for what was supposed to be just a professional phone call. Absolutely, I lied. Then prove it to me. Have dinner with me tomorrow night. It's strictly business. I need to discuss the floral palette for the Phoenix Lounge on Inauguration Day. It's a detail Lucia can't resolve. You will resolve it. I'm not available. You are. My driver will pick you up at 8 p.m. at Le Petit Fleur. That's a 5-star restaurant, Mateus. I don't have the clothes for. I refuse to believe that a woman who creates Queen of the Night tulips doesn't have the right attire for an occasion. And if you don't, buy one. My corporate card will be left with my driver. Think of it as a consulting cost. He was forcing my hand. He knew I needed the Phoenix contract, and he was using his position to drag me into his world of luxury and control. But if I refused, he could find a loophole in the inspection clause and threaten my contract, my new greenhouse. And, to be honest, a part of me, the part he had poked with the touch and the daring gift, was curious. Fine, I said, defeated. I'll have dinner with you. For business only. An audible smile appeared in his voice. Excellent. I'll see you tomorrow, Isla. And don't worry about my card. Just come prepared for the conversation. He hung up, giving me no time to respond. I threw the phone on the couch and rubbed my temples. The motard tulip on my table seemed to stare at me with a wild beauty, as if mocking my newfound loss of control. The business dinner was a farce, and we both knew it. It was Mateus Vasconcelos's first move in a game he expected to win before it even started. I just needed to figure out the rules and ensure that, in the end, I was the one who harvested my crop. I spent most of the next day in a state of productive denial. I ignored the motard tulip on my coffee table, which looked even more insolent in the sunlight, and obsessively focused on my flower beds. I needed to channel the tension Mateus had stirred into something useful. However, the prospect of the dinner hung over me like a storm. At 7:30 p.m., a black Mercedes pulled up on the dirt track of Flor de Cidade. It wasn't Mateus's car from the day before, and the uniformed driver, a man with an impassive face, was a stranger. He introduced himself as Jorge and, with a slight nod, extended a paper bag from a luxury boutique that I usually only saw in magazines. Mr. Vasconcelos instructed me to deliver this, Ms. Braga, he said. And these. He also handed me a thin, discreet envelope. Inside was a black card, with no name or logo, just a corporate credit card number. His presumption made me gasp. He actually expected me to shop with his card before our business dinner. Tell Mr. Vasconcelos that I won't accept this, I said, handing the card back to him. My orders are strict, Ms. Braga, he replied, without flinching. The car is waiting. And a delay will not be welcomed. Frustrated, I took the bag and closed the door. There was no time for an argument. I was already dressed in my best, a simple, elegant midi dress I saved for meetings with high-status suppliers. I opened the bag, more out of anger than curiosity. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, was a long dress in a shade of deep forest green, made of a fabric that draped with impressive fluidity. The cut was sophisticated, low cut in the back and fitted just right, the embodiment of discreet elegance. Along with it was a note. The green complements your passion for the earth. Don't worry about your outfit. Worry about your answer. MV. I felt a wave of anger mixed with a dangerous fascination. How did he know my size, my skin tone, my style? He had researched every detail, every aspect of me. He wasn't just paying me to be present, he was molding me for the occasion, forcibly inserting me into his world. I should have refused to wear it. But a total refusal meant I would be there in my professional armor, and he would see that as a weakness. Wearing the dress was his game, but it was also a way to confront him on his own turf. Reluctantly, but with a trace of defiance, I dressed. 15 minutes later, I was in the car, feeling the fabric of the dress slide against my skin. In the car, I was a fish out of water, but in the dress, I was a queen of the night, forcefully blooming in a foreign garden. Le Petit Fleur was a temple of haute cuisine. We were led through a labyrinth of discreet tables and silent waiters to a private table in the corner, shielded by wooden panels. Mateus Vasconcelos was there. He stood up the moment I walked in, and I had to fight not to hold my breath. He wore a charcoal gray suit, and the white silk shirt highlighted the intensity of his dark hair. He looked like he had stepped straight out of a movie, and the way he looked at me, scanning the dress, lingering on the neckline of my back, and finally meeting my eyes, made me realize that the electricity I felt in his greenhouse was real. "You came," he said, and it wasn't a question, but a declaration of victory. "You made it clear that my presence was mandatory," I replied, sitting in a chair he pulled out for me with the formal courtesy of a predator. "And I don't accept gifts, Mateus. The dress will be sent back." "At least give me the pleasure of seeing you in it for one night," he said, with a slow smile that finally reached his eyes. "It suits your intensity. You look stunning." I ignored the compliment. "Let's get straight to business. What do you need to discuss about the Phoenix Lounge that Lucia can't handle?" He gestured to the waiter, who immediately poured crystal-clear champagne. "You're direct, Isla. I like that. And you're evasive. I don't." He took a sip of champagne, his eyes fixed on me. "The Phoenix Lounge will be the center of attention. It's a glass and steel space with a view of the city. I envision something that represents resilience amidst fragility." Lucia suggested orchids. "Orchids are predictable," I said, immediately relaxing as I entered professional territory. "Glass and steel require something with structure and drama, but also with color. If the gala is about resilience, I suggest we use a massive display of bulbs. Solid color triumph tulips, perhaps crimson, planted in brushed steel boxes. They represent strength emerging from dormancy." His eyes narrowed in concentration. "I like the metaphor. And the color? Isn't crimson too aggressive? It's bold. Phoenix is asserting itself on the skyline. You don't want to be subtle. But to soften it, we can use orange ballerina tulips, which bring lightness and a touch of fire." "Ballerina," he repeated, savoring the name. "Subtle and elegant. That's a good combination. You have a surprising mind for design, Isla. No wonder you ran away from concrete." "I didn't run. I chose," I corrected. "And you made me come here for a color palette that could have been resolved by email." Mateus leaned back in his chair, his posture relaxed, but his intensity unchanged. "No, I made you come here because your work interests me. And because, Isla, you interest me." He dropped the bomb with the same ease he had taken off his shoes in my greenhouse. "Our mutual interest should be limited to the contract," I said, feeling my face flush. "What scares you about my interest? My wealth? My reputation? Or the fact that I saw the passion in your dirt and decided I want it?" "I am not something for you to want," I said, lowering my voice to avoid attention, but injecting force into every word. "I am not a rare tulip to add to your collection, Mateus." "No. You're much harder to cultivate. He smiled, a dangerous gleam in his dark eyes. I'm a man who knows what he wants, Isla. And you have exactly the combination of wildness and delicacy that fascinates me. And what would your brother, Arthur, think of this fascination of yours? His brother's name, who was Phoenix's vice president of public relations, made Mateus's smile disappear. His eyes turned cold, hard as obsidian. Arthur has nothing to do with my personal business, he said, his voice becoming sharp as glass. I heard he coordinates Phoenix's main suppliers and alliances. And that he has a particular interest in partnerships that align with his vision for expansion. I had done my homework after the inspection scare. Phoenix was in the process of consolidating power, and there were rumors of tension between Mateus, the finance-focused heir, and Arthur, the older brother, focused on strategic alliances. You're observant, Mateus admitted, the tension in his jaw visible. But you're losing focus. Arthur may be the PR guy, but I am the owner. I control the checks and the direction. My decisions are final, whether for a multi-million-dollar partnership or for the florist who supplies my tulips. And I am your weapon against imprudence? You are my trump card, he corrected, with a possessive intensity that sent a chill down my spine. You have the talent he envies. You are proof that my intuition is superior to his logic. And you are something that Arthur has also noticed, which only increases my interest. Interest, or competition? Mateus raised his glass in a forced toast. With me, Isla, it's always both. If you can't handle the competition, maybe you should have stayed in your concrete. I held his gaze, attraction and fear mixing into a confusing emotion. He wasn't a bored playboy, he was a man of power, accustomed to fighting for territory, and he saw me as the most desirable new territory. I'm a woman of flowers, Mateus, I said, drinking my champagne quickly. I know the thorns, and I know the danger. I'm used to dealing with competition. Good. Then deal with it. He nodded to the waiter and ordered the main course, without asking me what I wanted, but simply declaring, 2 sesame-crusted tuna fillets. He knew what to order. He had researched my tastes, or maybe he was just exerting his dominance. Throughout the rest of the dinner, he alternated between questions about my business, crop rotation, irrigation, organic methods, and penetrating comments about my personal life, if I had partners, if I was dating, if I missed the big city. Every question was a step in his chess game, every compliment a trap. When dinner ended, Mateus escorted me to the car. The night was cold, but the tension between us radiated heat. Thank you for the business dinner, I said, forcing a dry smile. You're welcome. He held my hand for an instant, the touch warm and familiar. I'll call you tomorrow to finalize the Phoenix Lounge details. Call Lucia, I insisted. I'll call you, he corrected, his voice firm. And don't try to return the dress. Consider it the first installment of a debt you can't pay. Debt? The price for intriguing me, Isla. The price is your attention. He opened the car door and gently ushered me inside, his hand sliding across my back for a moment longer than necessary. I felt the warmth of his touch through the fabric of the dress, and my body reacted with a shiver. Good night, Isla, he murmured. On the way back to the farm, I stared at my reflection in the car window. The dress was beautiful, expensive, and made me feel powerful. But Mateus was right. I was in debt, and the first installment had been paid with my presence. I just needed to make sure the final installment wasn't paid with my freedom. Upon arriving home, the first thing I did was take off the dress and put the matared tulip back on my table. I needed to regain control of my own garden. But I knew, with a cold certainty, that Mateus Vasconcelos would not accept a return. The game was on. Isla woke up the next morning with a renewed determination to re-establish herself in her own domain. I was used to dealing with the unpredictable nature of agriculture, but Mateus Vasconcelos's unpredictability was of an entirely different order. I put on my work uniform, old jeans, the worn flannel, and my muddy boots. I needed to feel the roughness of the earth, the clean smell of the greenhouse, to anchor myself. The expensive green dress was hanging up, packed and ready to be sent back at the first opportunity. The motard tulip had been spiked into a common vase with water, ignored. I spent the morning inspecting the new construction area. Seu João and a small group of contractors were assembling the metal structure for the winter greenhouse. It was heavy, noisy work, with the smell of metal and welding replacing the scent of peat for a time. "Girl, can I ask you something?" Seu João, his brows furrowed under his baseball cap, called me aside. "You can, João." "That man, Mateus, has he been here again?" "No, João. He has no reason to be. The Phoenix contract is closed. It's just that there's a car parked out there, on the street. Black. Since before the sun came up. It looks like it's just waiting." My heart gave an uncomfortable leap. This wasn't paranoia from Seu João. Mateus's luxury cars had a way of blending into the urban landscape, but they were glaring in the context of my farm. Was it surveillance? Was Mateus spying on me? Or was it just an idle employee? I dismissed the worry and dedicated myself to work, but the feeling of being watched was a constant irritation under my skin. At noon, while I was reviewing the structural plans in my small office attached to the barn, a dark shadow fell across the window. It wasn't Seu João or a contractor. I looked up and froze. Standing in the doorway, still with road dust on his shoes, was Arthur Vasconcelos. Arthur was an older, more polished version of Mateus. The same dark hair and the same imposing posture, but his eyes, a lighter shade of brown, were calculating and astute, devoid of the burning passion that characterized Mateus. He wore an impeccable blazer over a perfectly starched dress shirt. "Ms. Braga. I hope I'm not interrupting," he said, with cold courtesy. His voice was controlled and calm, the antithesis of Mateus's dominating tone. "Mr. Vasconcelos," I said, standing up, a knot in my stomach. I was covered in dust and holding a construction plan. "To what do I owe the honor of this visit, and how did you get in?" "The door was open," he replied, with a dry smile. "And don't worry, I know where to step. Unlike my brother, I appreciate the merit of a rustic work environment." The comment was a calculated dig at Mateus. "My office is not an environment for unscheduled visits, Mr. Vasconcelos. Especially not for the Vice President of Public Relations for Phoenix. I only need 5 minutes. I'm here in my role as curator of Phoenix Alliances, to ensure that Mateus's partners are suitable. And to better understand your approach." He looked at my table, where the plans for the new greenhouse and a sample of rich soil were spread out. His gaze landed on the vase with the motard tulip that Mateus had sent. Arthur's eyes narrowed slightly. "An interesting variety. Not common to find around here." "I have my sources," I said, defensively. I knew he had noticed the flower and, by implication, his brother's presence in my life. "I don't doubt it. Mateus has an eye for the exotic. And for unexpected acquisitions." The pause was strategic and full of meaning. "But let's return to business. Your contract for the gala." Mateus closed it very quickly, "Ms. Braga. My concern is that he may have been emotional in his choice, rather than strategic. I am the best tulip producer in the region, Mr. Vasconcelos. My work is not an emotional choice, it's the best professional option. Of course. But tulips require constant care with the climate. My brother is investing a considerable sum in you. What guarantees that you can maintain that quality, especially with the construction of this new structure?" He pointed to the plans on my table. That new structure is exactly what guarantees the quality, I replied, controlling my impatience. It's a state-of-the-art winter greenhouse. It allows me to control dormancy and bloom, guaranteeing the queen of the night tulip crop at the height of the social season. It's a necessary investment. Indeed. And I imagine an expensive investment. He rested his hands on a nearby filing cabinet. Is Mateus financing this project, Ms. Braga? The question was a low blow. He was poking at the wound of my independence. The financing is entirely my own, I said, keeping my chin up. And it's not subject to inspection. I'm not inspecting, I'm assessing risks. You see, Ms. Braga. My brother is brilliant, but he has a tendency to get distracted. He throws himself into new interests with great intensity and then discards them. And, frankly, your rustic charm. Arthur paused, sweeping my office with a condescending glance. Is the kind of distraction that can compromise a business alliance for Phoenix. I worry about the possibility of you becoming a liability. I am not a liability, Mr. Vasconcelos. I am an asset. And if your brother is as volatile as you claim, perhaps the greater risk lies in depending on his word. Arthur smiled, but it was a predatory smile, one that promised no good. You are shrewd. That's why I'm here. Mateus sees you as a trump card in a personal ego game. I see you as a potential security flaw that can be used against him. Used by whom? By those who think the leadership of Phoenix should be more strategic, more predictable. As you know, the succession is always at stake. And any lapse in Mateus's judgment is an opportunity for his internal competitors. He leaned towards me, lowering his voice. My advice, Ms. Braga, is to keep your relationship with Mateus strictly professional and distant. Avoid non-essential meetings, and return any expensive gift he may have sent as soon as possible. His gaze again fixed on the motard tulip. If you become a personal complication, he will discard you, and I will be responsible for terminating your contract. And believe me, my process is much less charming than Mateus's inspection. The threat was clear. He was warning me that his brother's game had real consequences, and that I was the most vulnerable pawn. Thank you for the warning, Mr. Vasconcelos, I said, my voice tense. But I'm not the type of woman to be intimidated by threats, whether they come from a vice president or an heir. Of course not. He straightened up. You have thorns. I noticed them in your cultivation. However, remember, the fragility of tulips is known to all. Consider who is more willing to protect you, and who is more willing to use you. Arthur pulled his cell phone from his pocket. I must go. I'm due to meet Mateus for a meeting about a new acquisition in the port area. He's always busy building his empire. But the message has been delivered. He turned and left, as silently and controlled as he had arrived. I closed the office door behind him, my body trembling slightly. Arthur was the personification of cold, calculating danger, while Mateus was the fiery, unpredictable danger. I picked up the phone, my finger hovering over Mateus's blocked number. I needed to know if he was aware of what Arthur was doing, if he was deliberately exposing me to this risk. Before I could dial, I received a text message from an unknown number. Arthur visited you. He's trying to scare you. Don't worry, I'm aware. Your address will be much more useful in protecting you than any threat from him. MV. A chill ran down my spine. He not only knew Arthur had been here, but he knew he was trying to scare me. The car on the street wasn't an idle employee, it was surveillance. Was Mateus protecting me, or watching me? And how did he know so quickly? I looked at the green dress back on the hanger, and felt the urgency to send it back diminish. The soft fabric now felt like a piece of armor. Arthur's warning was real, but Mateus's protection, however possessive, seemed increasingly inevitable. The game was no longer about a contract, it was about Mateus and Arthur, and I was right in the middle of the battlefield. And for the first time, I had the feeling that I wouldn't be allowed to abandon the fight. Arthur Vasconcelos's visit and Mateus's subsequent text message had pushed me into a state of permanent alert. I knew there was a car parked on the street, monitoring my farm, but it was impossible to determine if this surveillance was a measure of protection against Arthur's intrigues or an extension of Mateus's possessive obsession. The line was incredibly thin. The next morning, I was determined to regain control. I needed concrete answers, and I needed to prove to myself that my work was still the center of my life. I had an important delivery for a longtime client, a boutique florist in the most exclusive neighborhood of the city, and I focused all my attention on that. At 10 a.m., while I was preparing hand-tied bouquets of pink and white parrot in the packing barn, Mateus called. The number was the same blocked one, and I answered on the third ring, with dirty gloves still on my hands. "Isla. I see you're busy." His voice was calm, almost bored, but I sensed the note of possessiveness. He was being informed in real time. "I'm working. Unlike some people, I don't have time to be sending deliveries or credit cards." Acidity, morning humor. I like it. It's a good contrast to the sweetness of your tulips. There was a slight chuckle on the other end. I called to sort out an important detail. "I'm with the interior designers. We need permanent arrangements for Phoenix's common areas. 3 different locations. 3 distinct visions. And I only trust your judgment. Mateus, send me the specifications by email, and I'll prepare a quote." This isn't a briefing, Isla. It's a challenge. I want you to see the spaces, feel the architecture, and tell me what works. I want your touch, not a catalog's. I can't just drop everything to go to. You can. SEU Joao can oversee the contractors and the rest of the harvest. Jorge will pick you up in half an hour. Wear the green dress, Isla. The command irritated me. I don't wear clothes to satisfy your ego, Mateus. And the dress is packed for return. It doesn't matter. Jorge has the location specifications. Wear whatever you want, but come with an open mind. I want your vision. And, by the way, his voice dropped to a dangerous tone, Arthur called Lucia to try to cancel your contract. We had a productive discussion about it. What does that mean? It means you're not just my supplier. You're my point of friction with my brother. And I won't back down. But for me to keep him away, you need to give me proof that you were worth fighting for. You're blackmailing me. I'm giving you the opportunity to build a business bigger than you dreamed of, while helping me deal with a family problem. Think of it as a strategic alliance. He hung up. Half an hour later, Jorge was at my door. I was in dark pants and a silk blouse, refusing to wear the dress. The only thing I accepted was the leather folder Jorge handed me, containing the details of the 3 locations. The first stop was the spectacular Phoenix headquarters, the new glass and steel skyscraper that loomed over the city. Mateus was waiting for me in the lobby, which was more of a minimalist art gallery. Isla. Right on time, he said, with a gleam of satisfaction that indicated he had expected otherwise. He wore an impeccable light gray suit. Don't worry about the dress. What matters is the woman inside. He took my arm, a touch of possession disguised as courtesy, and guided me through the spaces. The first location was the vast lobby, with a triple-height ceiling and white marble walls. There was a modern art installation in the center, all hard lines and metal. What works here? He asked. The environment is cold. I need warmth, but not fluffiness. I let go of his arms so I could absorb the space. You need something that rivals the scale, Mateus. Nothing small. Orchids, yes, but not common ones. Massive tropical plants. Ficus lyrata with sculptural trunks. And, at the focal points, long black terracotta vases with tiger lilies. Tiger lilies? Yes. The color is intense, the foliage is heavy. They have a bold, almost wild beauty that defies the sterility of this lobby. It's a touch of untamed life amidst the control. Matthias smiled, approval shining in his eyes. Untamed life. I love that. The second location was an exclusive executive lounge, with a panoramic view of the city. The design was dark leather, walnut wood, and low light. The atmosphere was one of discreet power. "This is where real business happens," he murmured, his voice low. "I need something that conveys stability, confidence, and silent luxury. Not flowers. Plants," I declared. "You need texture and depth. Cacti and succulents in dark ceramic arrangements. They are resilient, require little attention, but their geometry and form are fascinating. They convey longevity and self-sufficiency. And they don't compete with the view." Matthias looked thoughtful, running his fingers over the edge of a glass table. "You were right. No flowers. Succulents. They're like some of my directors, hard to kill and discreetly lethal." He looked at me. "You understand survival." "I come from the earth, Matthias. I understand survival." The third location was Matthias's personal office. Vast, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a massive mahogany desk. It was the epicenter of Phoenix's power. "This is my sanctuary," he said. "Here, the choice is personal. I need something that anchors me, something that reminds me what I'm fighting to protect." I surveyed the office, feeling the weight of his ambition. "You have the world out there," I said, pointing to the view. "You need what is not predictable. No elegant cut flowers. You need something simple and with roots." I stopped near a niche in the glass wall. "I suggest a single snake plant, Sansevieria, but in an artistic arrangement. The leaves are vertical, strong, but the plant itself is incredibly resilient, thriving in adversity. And next to it, you need a contrast of color and beauty that only lasts a day." "And what would that be?" "I will provide you with a single tulip every morning. From the rarest or newest variety in bloom. The most fleeting beauty, reserved only for this office. It will remind you of the price and the fragility of what you desire." Matthias was silent for a long moment. His eyes were locked on mine, and the intensity of his gaze was almost palpable. "Fleeting beauty and untamed resilience," he repeated. "You understood me perfectly, Isla." He stepped closer, and the touch of his hand on my arm was electric. "You have become more than a supplier. I'm a consultant, Matthias. And my price is high." "I know." We left the office, and Matthias escorted me to the elevator. "I approve all 3 designs," he said. "The contract for the installation and maintenance of the permanent plants will be sent to you today. It's a 5-year contract, Isla. A substantial investment. Think of it as our official response to Arthur. A 5-year contract is an alliance. And alliances have rules. The rules are simple: you give me your vision and your attention, and I give you security and capital. No one, not even Arthur, will touch your farm or your business while you're working for me." "And what if I don't want to work for you?" "You're already working for me. And I know what you need." He pulled a small notepad from his pocket and scribbled quickly. "I'm hosting a charity party in my penthouse on Saturday night. Strictly intimate. My brother will be there, and other potential competitors. He handed me the note. "Saturday, 8 p.m. Wear the green. You are my principal guest. Introduce yourself as my curatorial partner. MV. I'm your flower curator. You are my choice. And in my world, that's the only one that matters. Wear the dress, Isla. I need everyone to know you're mine. Not out of possession, but out of preference. The elevator arrived. He opened the door for me, his look intense and challenging. I knew I was diving headfirst into his world, but the 5-year Phoenix contract was the future I dreamed of for my farm. I'll be there, I said, accepting the invitation and the challenge. As the elevator descended, I looked at the note. Mateus wasn't buying me. He was claiming me as part of his power struggle, and the green dress was the uniform for the battle. I just needed to make sure that, in the end, I chose my own side. Friday was a whirlwind of focused work and repressed anxiety. The 5-year Phoenix contract arrived by email, and I reviewed it with my lawyer. The terms were generous, almost scandalously in my favor, confirming Mateus's urgency to formalize the alliance. The contract guaranteed the annual purchase of a massive quantity of tulips, in addition to the consulting and maintenance of the permanent arrangements. The only strange attachment was a vague clause about accessibility and presence at key social events for curatorial purposes. It was Mateus's Trojan horse. I signed it. The financial security of Flor de Cidade was guaranteed, but the price, I knew, was my freedom. My cell phone rang. It was Mateus. The contract is signed. Congratulations, Isla. You've just taken the first step into the Vasconcelos world. I've taken a step into the world of tulips, Mateus. The rest is just an attachment. Don't be fooled. In my world, attachments become the main event. Your success is now mine, and vice versa. And that brings us to Saturday night. I'll be there, Mateus. To fulfill the accessibility clause. Excellent. But we have a logistical problem. Arthur will be there, and he hasn't taken your alliance well. I noticed. He visited me. I know. And he will try to undermine you. He sees you as a weak piece in my defense. You need something that will leave him speechless. You will wear the green dress, Isla. I already told you I don't take orders on what to wear. And the dress will be returned on Monday. Isla, stop fighting what's inevitable. I didn't buy it for my possession, I bought it for your protection. It is your armor. It makes you stand out, but the material, the cut, the cost, it sends a clear message that you are important. It's the only thing Arthur respects, the cost of entry. His honesty about the dress being a tool of power, and not a fetish, struck me. He was teaching me the rules of his dirty game. And if you have more unscheduled visits, Isla, don't hesitate to call me. I'll tell Jorge to be more vigilant. Are you watching me? I'm protecting my investment, Isla. Your value is too high to leave to chance. It's a courtesy, not an invasion. I didn't believe a word, but Arthur's threat was real. On Saturday night, at 7:30 p.m., I stood in front of my mirror, an almost unrecognizable version of myself. I was wearing the green dress. The fabric fell like water over my curves, and the deep color highlighted the golden tone of my hair. My shoes weren't designer, but they were elegant, and I felt taller, sharper. I looked like the florist who had mastered her own kingdom, not the one covered in dirt. The dress was a lie. But in Mateus's world, lies were the most effective tools. I picked up one of my own creations to take. Not a bouquet, but a single queen of the night tulip in a perfect bud, tied with a black velvet ribbon. The flower was deep, almost black, symbolizing mystery and power. Jorge was at the door punctually. Ms. Braga. Mr. Vasconcelos is waiting. Mateus's penthouse was at the top of the new Phoenix skyscraper, the same building that hosted the gala. When the elevator opened, I was greeted by a space that was the personification of cold elegance: glass walls, a 360 degrees view of the city, and expensive art on marble pedestals. Mateus was waiting for me near the window, a glass of wine in his hand. He was in a black tuxedo, imposing and incredibly attractive. The way his eyes examined me, from my hair to the tip of my shoes, was an intimate scrutiny, and a slow smile of satisfaction spread across his face. "You chose the right armor," he said, raising his glass. "The green makes you the only real color in the sea of gray and white." "I chose what is strategic," I corrected him, handing him the Queen of the Night tulip. "I brought this for the executive lounge. Remember what you're fighting to protect." He took the flower, and for a brief moment, his fingers brushed mine. He inhaled the bud's soft fragrance. The beauty of fragility. Yes. A perfect reminder. At that moment, a sliding door opened, revealing an elegant couple, Arthur Vasconcelos and a tall, incredibly well-dressed blonde woman. Arthur stopped when he saw me. His eyes scanned my dress, the diamond on my neck, which was mine, at least, and my proximity to Mateus. Anger flashed in his eyes. Mateus had won the first round. "Mateus," Arthur said, with false cordiality. "I see the florist is adjusting well to your attachments." "Isla is not an attachment, Arthur. She is my consultant and curatorial partner for Phoenix," Mateus said, placing a possessive arm around my back and pulling me to his side. The gesture was subtle, but the message was unmistakable. "She is ensuring that your rustic charm doesn't contaminate our empire." Mateus was inserting me directly into the crossfire. "Ms. Braga," Arthur said, his eyes cold. "It's good to see you managed to get out of your muddy boots. Mateus is very good at turning finds into display pieces." "I am not a display, Mr. Vasconcelos," I said, keeping my voice calm and level, feeling the green armor give me courage. "I am a businesswoman, and Mateus recognized the value of my talent. It's a shame you don't have the same vision for the future." The blow hit Arthur, and he regained his composure with quick elegance. "I see Mateus has trained you well in his rhetoric." "But Mateus," Arthur turned to his brother, ignoring me. "Ms. Braga is a florist, not a design consultant. You are overvaluing her, and in this circle, that looks like a lack of judgment." "I don't overvalue anything, Arthur. I merely invest in talents you can't see," Mateus said, with a sneer. "And by the way, Isla and I are having dinner tomorrow night. A business meeting. She needs to inspect the garden location for our next major installation." I looked at Mateus, surprised. We hadn't agreed on dinner. He was improvising, using me as a shield and a weapon. "An inspection dinner," Arthur scoffed. "I know what your inspection dinners are like, Mateus. In any case, I'm sure Ms. Braga will be duly compensated for any inconvenience." "She already is," Mateus said, pulling me closer, and his lips brushed my ear. "The price is my time, Arthur. And Ms. Braga is very interested in how I use my time." The subtext was lewd, obvious, and he wanted Arthur to think our relationship was intimate. Anger flooded me, but I maintained the smile. I was his weapon. I would play my part. "Indeed," I said, looking directly at Arthur. "And Mateus is a very demanding employer." Mateus's smile widened, victorious. He had achieved what he wanted. The first round, in the Phoenix penthouse, had been won. But I knew Mateus's game was just as dangerous as Arthur's. I was wearing his armor, but I still had to make sure I didn't become his prey. The Saturday night in Mateus's penthouse solidified my position as his curatorial partner and, in unspoken terms, his potential lover, at least in the minds of Arthur and the other guests. Matthias was a master of innuendo and possessive touches. His arm on my back, the whisper in my ear, the way he introduced me, all screamed, my choice. My territory. I barely slept. The tension between the brothers was an electric field, and I was right in the center of it. Arthur's threat and Matthias's dangerous attraction had left me exhausted but alert. The Sunday inspection dinner was not just an invitation, it was a summons. Matthias called me promptly at 10 a.m. Where would you like to inspect the location, Matthias? I asked, determined to maintain professionalism. My place. You've never seen the rooftop gardens. It's a project I demand you take on. Jorge will pick you up in an hour. And Isla, he added, his voice low, we don't need tricks tonight. Just honesty. I doubted the honesty part, but I accepted. I needed to see the space to get a clear idea of what he expected from a major installation. When I arrived at the penthouse again, Matthias was waiting for me alone. He was dressed casually, dark jeans, a black polo shirt that accentuated the width of his shoulders, but still radiated the same contained power. Welcome back, he said, without the possessive touch of the day before, but with an intensity in his eyes that was equally disarming. Thank you. Where is the inspection location? It's on the terrace. But first, tell me. How are you feeling after our show last night? I felt used. But the message was delivered. Arthur is furious. Exactly what I wanted. He led me into the minimalist-designed kitchen and poured me a glass of white wine. You did well. You are a natural adversary, Isla. You didn't back down. I don't back down on my farm or in a penthouse. Now, the garden. He smiled, that slow, satisfied predator's smile. You won't let me get away from work. I like that. Matthias opened a glass door, and the cool afternoon wind hit us. The terrace was vast, circling the entire penthouse, but the surprise was the garden. Away from the marble and glass, there was a carefully orchestrated sanctuary of foliage and flowers. It's a minimalist Zen garden, I said, impressed. It's incredible that you managed to build an ecosystem like this on the 40th floor. I don't build anything halfway. But it's not finished. I need a focal point. Something that captures attention. My refuge needs a soul. He led me to a stone area, which overlooked a spectacular view of the city. I want you to build your universe here, Isla. I want Flor de Cidade transplanted to my rooftop. But with your signature. I looked at the space, feeling a thrill of inspiration. The project was grand, it would require planning, resources, and, most importantly, it would give Matthias an incredibly intimate view of my work. What do you envision? I envision resilience. I envisioned a raised flowerbed of tulips. Not the tropical ones, Isla. The varieties you cultivate in the cold earth. They have to be here, defying the wind and the altitude. The beauty that refuses to die. I shook my head. It's possible, but complex. It requires special soil, insulation, rigorous temperature control. And a constant source of replacement bulbs. Cost is irrelevant. I want the impossible. Your resilience here. He turned to me, intensity in his eyes. You are the only one who can do it, Isla. You have the stubbornness and the talent to make beauty emerge where it shouldn't exist. It's a long-term commitment, Matthias. It's not an installation that can be discarded in 6 months. I am a man of long-term commitments, he said, and the tone of his voice was not just about the flowers. Are you willing to do the inspection? I knelt on the stone floor, ignoring the dress. I took a sample of the existing soil in the flower bed. The soil was poor, it would need imported peat and clay. I would need a team of structural engineers to ensure the weight, I said. And a 4-season design plan. And a personalized winter protection greenhouse. You will have the team and the budget. You will have everything you need. Just say what you want. Professionalism absorbed me, and I started giving instructions, tracing lines on the floor. I was in my element, talking about Earth, dormancy, and engineering challenges. Matthias watched me in silence, without interrupting, his attention a laser focus. And I finished, standing up, my hands stained with dirt. I need a work and storage area in the penthouse for maintenance. I don't trust third parties with my tulips. You will have the guest bedroom, he said, with a sneer. I need a climate-controlled storage area. Not a bedroom. You will have both. We returned inside. As I cleaned my hands at the sink, he approached, and the silence in the kitchen was heavy. You were almost more beautiful just now, with the dirt on your cheek, than you were last night in the dress, he said. Work ignites you, Isla. I'm in my element, I replied, controlling my breathing. Is your business inspection finished? Almost. He was too close, inches away. You are incredibly talented, Isla. And the way you described the survival of the flowers. I understand. He grabbed a paper towel and, with the same calculated slowness he had used at my farm, he wiped a smudge of dirt from my arm. Arthur will see this project as the final proof of my imprudence, he said. He knows that a Vasconcelos's garden is a statement. He knows that your constant presence here will be interpreted as something more than curation. And what is your defense? My defense is my certainty. And my certainty is you. I trust your talent above any political risk. He lightly touched my shoulder. I didn't call you here to play. I called you here to show you the battle line. You have my word, and my check. But I need you to be what you are, ruthless and real. And I need you to tell me the truth. About what? About Miles. My heart skipped a beat. Who is Miles? My brother. You must have noticed that Arthur is my older brother. Miles is my younger brother. He's the charming one, the non-worker, the one who doesn't care. He'll be in town this week, and he has a tendency to involve himself with anything that interests me. He was giving me a warning about a new player in the game. You're a beautiful woman, Isla. And a challenge. Miles will notice. If he approaches you, if he courts you, you need to tell me. Because in my world, Arthur's games are about business, but Miles's games are about personal possession. And I will not allow him to touch what is mine. I am not yours, Matthias. Aren't you? He looked at me, the darkness in his eyes was absolute. You have my dress, my contract, and you are about to turn my penthouse into your farm. You are in all my thoughts, Isla. What else could it be, but mine? I stepped away, fighting the shiver he had provoked. That's dominance, Matthias. It's not possession. Call it whatever you want. I will see you tomorrow. I will arrange building access and the engineering blueprints. He didn't kiss me, he didn't touch me again. He just stared at me with the same intensity that a gardener stares at a crop he is desperate to harvest. The surveillance and the attraction, the promise and the warning, it all merged into a single certainty. I was the most important piece in his game. I left the penthouse, knowing that the garden on the 40th floor would be my masterpiece, but also my trap. The week began with a flurry of emails from Matthias. He not only sent the engineering blueprints and released the budget for the suspended garden, but also provided me with VIP access to the Phoenix building and introduced me to his team of structural engineers. He was, indeed, a ruthless employer, demanding daily reports and meticulous details about the soil and the drainage system. His communication was strictly professional, focused on the terrace project and the permanent installation of tiger lilies in the lobby. However, there was always a subtle final note, a comment about the absence of the green dress or the observation that the queen of the night tulips in his office were blooming beautifully. He was constantly reminding me of his omnipresent attention. I was in my element, negotiating with the engineers and drawing detailed sketches of the raised flower bed. The project was colossal and inspiring, and I channeled the tension provoked by the Vasconcelos into the earth and the construction plans. On Wednesday, my phone rang. It wasn't Mateus, nor a blocked number. It was a local call, and I hesitated before answering. Hello? Isla Braga? It's Miles Thornton. Or should I say, Miles Vasconcelos? The voice was light, warm, and devoid of any threat, carrying a casual charm that contrasted with Mateus's authority or Arthur's coldness. My heart skipped a beat. Miles. He had already made his move. It's Isla Braga. And I don't have the honor, I replied, trying to keep my voice professional. Ah, but you will. Mateus talked about you. With an intensity that immediately made me seek out the source of his new obsession. You're the woman of rare tulips, right? The touch of wild life in the corporate empire. He sounded like a spoiled brat, but there was no malice in his tone, just easy curiosity. Exactly as Mateus had warned, he was the charming one, the non-worker. I am Phoenix's flower supplier, Mr. Vasconcelos. Call me Miles, please. And I disagree. Mateus doesn't get that agitated over a simple supplier. He gets agitated over something he can't control. And you, Isla, seem like the perfect chaos in his organized world. I am not chaos. I am organization. And Mateus is not agitated. Ah, he is. We had a brotherly lunch today, and he spent more time talking about the structure of your winter greenhouse than the Newport deal. That, my dear, is the equivalent of a tantrum for Mateus. He doesn't divide his focus. I would appreciate it if you didn't talk about your brother. If you need flowers, call my assistant. I don't need flowers. I need a real conversation. I heard you have an incredible farm, an oasis in the middle of this concrete jungle. I'd like to see it. Perhaps tomorrow afternoon? We could have coffee, and you could show me your tulips. Not for inspection, but for pleasure. I hesitated. Refusing would reinforce Mateus's narrative that I was under his control. Accepting would be entering Miles's game, which Mateus had forbidden. But Miles didn't have Arthur's cold threat, he had a nonchalant charm. I don't accept unscheduled visits to the farm, Miles. It's a working environment. I'm not giving you an ultimatum, Isla. I'm extending an invitation. No reports to my brother, no 5-year contracts. Just two curious adults. And I can guarantee that Mateus would hate for you to show me your sanctuary. The challenge, more than the charm, convinced me. If I was Mateus's weapon against Arthur, I should be the smartest player. I needed to know what made Miles Mateus's weakness. Fine, Miles, I said, resigned. Tomorrow afternoon, at 3 p.m. Just coffee, and just 45 minutes. And I will be strictly professional. Excellent. I love challenges. And I promise, Isla, I'm much more fun than structural spreadsheets. He hung up, and a chill ran through me. I had just invited Mateus's prohibition onto my territory. 15 minutes later, Mateus called. The blocked number. You have a visit tomorrow, he said, without even a hello, his voice tense and low. I have a meeting with the engineer, yes. At 2 p.m. I'm not talking about the engineer. I'm talking about Miles. I felt the heat rising in my neck. How do you know that? I know everything about you that is relevant to my empire, Isla. He called you. And you agreed to receive him at your farm. The word farm sounded like glare in his mouth. He called me to ask about the tulips. I'm a businesswoman, Matthias. I receive clients. He's not a client. He is my blind spot. I warned you, Isla. He involves himself with everything that interests me. He is my form of punishment for being successful. He doesn't see you as a woman, Isla. He sees you as a chess piece against me. And what do you see me as, Matthias? Your weapon against Arthur? You have no right to dictate my appointments. I have the right to protect my investment and my focus. You are risking our contract, Isla. You are risking my ability to keep Arthur away. His anger was contained, but more terrifying than a scream. He's your brother, Matthias. And he was polite and asked to see the flowers. If you're afraid of a lunch with your brother, that's your problem, not mine. It's not fear. It's certainty. You can't understand the dynamics between the Vasconcelos. If you receive him here, he will use your vulnerability, your passion for the earth, to undermine what we have. What we have is a contract, Matthias. And it will be fulfilled. Not if you give him the opportunity to spoil everything. Cancel the meeting, Isla. Now. I won't cancel. I am independent, Matthias. And I don't take orders on who I receive on my property. There was a long silence, heavy and menacing. Fine, he finally said, his voice cold as ice. You want to play his game? Play it. But remember, Isla. I am the only one who can keep you safe in this world. And if he convinces you to turn against me, you will lose more than a 5-year contract. You will lose your protection. He hung up, leaving me alone with the sound of my pounding heart. I was caught between Arthur's menacing coldness and Matthias's possessive attraction, and now, Miles's nonchalant charm. I had opened my gate to the Vasconcelos game, and the price of my independence could be my future. I could only hope that my intuition was stronger than their power. I prepared for Miles Vasconcelos' arrival with a feverish tension. Matthias's threat hung over me, not as a fear of physical violence, but as the terror of losing the stability that the Phoenix contract provided me. He had offered me a future, and now he was forcing me to choose between my independence and his protection. Punctually at 3 p.m., a red sports car, which looked scandalously out of place on my dirt road, pulled up near the barn. SCU Joao, who had been instructed to remain discreet, watched from afar with a scowl. Miles Vasconcelos stepped out of the car. Unlike Matthias, he wasn't in a suit. He wore a designer cotton t-shirt and ripped jeans, with an air of artistic disinterest. He had the same dark hair and the same striking beauty, but his eyes, a lighter brown than Matthias's, carried a spark of amusement. He was the definition of nonchalant charm. Isla Braga, he said, extending his hand with an easy smile. This place is a scandal. I love it. You're lucky to have survived the city's growth. Miles, I replied, shaking his hand. His touch was light, fleeting, in stark contrast to Matthias's firm, possessive grip. I'm glad you managed to venture outside the center. Matthias gave me the mandatory lecture about distractions before I left. He insists you're a volatile asset that I should keep my distance from. That just made me want to come faster. I am not an asset, Miles. I'm a businesswoman. I know. But in his world, everything he covets is an asset to be guarded. He looked at the greenhouse, with genuine interest. Will you show me the flowers? Matthias seemed certain that the farm was a state secret. I felt the weight of Matthias's surveillance hanging over us, the discreet car on the street, the imminent report. I knew Miles was being watched, and by extension, so was I. If Matthias expected me to act with fear, I would do the opposite. Come, I said. I'll show you the varieties your brother never asked for. Miles was a fascinating and unexpectedly pleasant guest. He didn't have Arthur's condescension or Matthias's overwhelming authority. He asked questions about the tulips with a childlike curiosity, and his joy was genuine. How do you get this color? He asked, examining a Rembrandt tulip with crimson and white stripes. It's a controlled viral mutation, Miles. It requires a lot of attention. The beauty is the result of a disease. That's fascinating. Beauty born from chaos. Matthias loves organized beauty. He would never appreciate something that is fundamentally unstable. He smiled. Which, I imagine, is the reason why he's so obsessed with you. He's not obsessed. He has a project. Projects, yes. Obsessions, too. Matthias and Arthur are two sides of the same coin, control and order. I am the chaos they fear. I travel, I don't work, and I spend their money. I am a constant reminder that there's more to life than building empires. And you came here to convince me to abandon my projects for a life of chaos? No. I came here to warn you. He stopped, and the light air of playfulness disappeared from his eyes. Matthias won't stop with the subtle control, Isla. He'll get more intense. And Arthur. Arthur will use your relationship with Matthias to undermine your credibility. They are ruthless. Arthur visited me. And threatened me with contract cancellation. Miles was surprised. Arthur came here? On his own? He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. He doesn't bother to dirty his shoes for just anyone. He really sees you as a threat to Matthias's power. And that makes me even more interested. Why are you warning me? To make me give up Matthias and join your team? There is no my team, Isla. There is only Matthias and Arthur fighting for succession. And I'm here to ensure that Matthias doesn't make unnecessary mistakes. He is the legitimate heir, but he has a tendency to get distracted by his rare pieces. And you are the rarest piece he has ever acquired. The risk is yours, Isla. If you're not willing to face the Vasconcelos war, abandon Phoenix now. The warning was similar to Arthur's, but given with a genuine concern. I won't abandon my future because of your family's games, I said, stubbornness in my voice. Good. That's the answer Matthias needed to hear. Are you testing me for him? Miles smiled, but there was something melancholic in his gaze. Perhaps. Or perhaps I'm testing him. If he's willing to risk everything for you, it means you're more than an asset. It means he sees you as something he never had, a real weakness. He turned, and I followed him to the barn door. Matthias is an all-or-nothing man, Isla. He doesn't know how to play. And I'm certain he didn't like the idea of you showing me your sanctuary. Miles didn't leave immediately. He leaned against his sports car, grabbed his cell phone, and seemed to be typing a message. I was about to go back to the barn when a black SUV, identical to the one I suspected was on the street, stopped a few feet from Miles's car. The door opened, and Matthias Vasconcelos stepped out. He was in a suit, his face tense, his dark eyes fixed on Miles and then on me. Contained fury radiated from him like heat. Miles, Matthias said, his voice low and dangerous. Your flower inspection time is up. Miles put away his cell phone, an affected smile on his face. Matthias. What a surprise. Isla was showing me how Rembrandt tulips thrive. Beauty born from disease. You should have stayed. It's fascinating. You're not interested in flowers, Miles. You're interested in disruption. And I already instructed Isla to maintain a professional distance. And she did, Miles said, with a sneer. We talked about tulips, Phoenix succession, and your fear of weakness. All very professionally. I didn't touch a single bulb. He turned to me, with a wink. Thank you for the hospitality, Isla. I'll call you for our next brotherly lunch. He got into the car and sped off, kicking up a cloud of dust in Mateus's face. Mateus took a few steps toward me, ignoring the dirt on his suit. The anger in his eyes was palpable, but mixed with something else. What did he tell you? He demanded. He warned me about Arthur. And he warned me about you. He said you're incapable of playing and that I'm the rarest piece you've ever acquired. Which, given your temper, he was right to say. And you received him here to prove a point. To challenge me at my own game? This is my battlefield, Mateus. Not yours. And I received him here because I needed information. Miles gave me the missing piece. Arthur is using our relationship to undermine you. And you are using our contract to tether me to your protection. Mateus stopped right in front of me. He extended his hand, and this time, he grabbed my arm, not with gentleness, but with possessive strength. You are naive, Isla. Don't you realize he was here to plant the seed of doubt? To make you turn against me? And you came here to prove to me that your surveillance is justified? To show me that I really have no choice? You don't, he murmured, his voice rough. I won't allow Miles to use you. And you're risking everything we've built. You're risking us. He pulled me closer, and I felt the smell of his expensive cologne and the tension of his body. I'm not the hero, Isla. I'm the dominator. And you can't fight what you are. You are mine, and I will keep you safe, away from both my brothers. But that means you don't challenge me on what's mine. He released my arm, and the damage was done. He had claimed me, on my own territory, in front of his surveillance car. I will return tomorrow for the engineering inspection on the suspended garden, he said, his voice returning to its cold authority. And Isla, wear the green dress. I need every advantage I can get. He turned, without waiting for an answer, and got into the SUV. I stood there, looking at the dust settling on my farm. I had proven my point, but in doing so, I had only confirmed to Mateus that I was a territory worth guarding, even if it meant imprisoning me. The tension after Miles's visit and Mateus's confrontation turned Flor de Cidade into a siege zone. I was furious at Mateus's surveillance and the possessive certainty with which he had claimed me on my own land. The statement "you are mine" echoed in my head, mixing with the undeniable attraction he exerted. The week proceeded with the installation of the raised flower bed in the penthouse. Mateus was constantly present, not as a CEO, but as an obsessive foreman. He supervised the soil mix, the installation of the thermal insulation, and the positioning of the retaining stones. With every step, he seemed to be inspecting the garden as much as me. On Thursday, Mateus was in my office at the farm, ignoring the dust and chaos of the scattered engineering plans. He was in a dark suit, and the incongruity of his presence was striking. The engineer agreed to the drainage specifications. The protection greenhouse will be installed next week, he said, with the usual cold efficiency. You are doing exceptional work, Isla. I don't need your praise, Mateus. I need space to breathe. You want space? You're doing the impossible, transplanting cold earth bulbs to the 40th floor. That requires absolute control. And I am giving you that control. I am the only one who can give you that. And what do you get in return? He leaned against the door, arms crossed, and the darkness in his eyes made me hold my breath. I gain Arthur's silence. And I gain your attention. That is enough for now. The next morning, SCU Joao called me to the front of the farm with a deep scowl. Isla, this showed up here. It's not from Matthias, but it's rich people's stuff. On the front porch, where I usually stacked bags of peat, there was an elegantly simple dark wooden box, tied with a silk ribbon. There was no sender, but the stapled card was on paper with the same fine embossing as Arthur Vasconcelos's. Inside the box, on beds of tissue paper and sphagnum moss, there were no flowers, but tulip bulbs. Hundreds of them, of the most exotic and almost impossible to find parrot variety. They were bulbs of unparalleled quality, rare and incredibly expensive. The card was brief and direct. No disease. No uncertainty. True beauty needs no mutation. Use them for the executive lounge. You have talent, Ms. Braga. Don't risk it because of poor judgment. You have a choice, Isla. Arthur. The contrast with Matthias's gift, the challenging Matard tulip, was striking. Matthias sent me chaos, Arthur sent me order and the promise of control and security. Arthur was offering me a way out, an alliance that circumvented Matthias's possessiveness, but required me to betray his trust. If I used the bulbs in the executive lounge, Matthias would know I had accepted his brother's gift, signaling a potential change of loyalty. I picked up the phone and called Matthias. Arthur sent me bulbs, I said, without preamble. The parrot variety for the executive lounge. He says it's a choice. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Bulbs, Matthias finally said, his voice low, more dangerous than if he had screamed. He's offering you certainty. He's testing your loyalty. And what do you want me to do? You're going to use them, he replied, surprising me. What? But that will signal to him that you're smart. Use Arthur's bulbs, but use them in a raised flower bed of my penthouse, Matthias commanded, his voice returning to its authority. Use his gift to make my vision bloom. And for the executive lounge, you will do a display of succulents and cacti, exactly as you planned. Maintain resilience. Maintain order. You want me to use your brother's gift to build your private sanctuary? I want you to show me that you're not a chess piece, Isla. I want you to use his offer to strengthen our project. And I want Arthur to see that his cost of entry merely paved the way for my victory. A thrill of fascination ran through me. Matthias wasn't just fighting his brother, he was absorbing him, using his weapons. Fine, Matthias. I'll plant the bulbs on your terrace. Good. And Isla, wear the green tomorrow. I have a board meeting, and you will be by my side to present the garden plans. Arthur will be there. The next day, I was in Matthias's penthouse, wearing the green dress. I felt like a camouflaged warrior, prepared for battle. The presentation to the board and Arthur was tense. I explained the lobby projects, tiger lilies, and the executive lounge, succulents and cacti. Arthur watched me like a hawk. When I got to the penthouse project, I described the raised flower bed, the insulation, and the watering system. And the bulbs, Ms. Braga? Arthur asked, with an affected smile. Will you use the ones Matthias selected, or did you opt for the more stable quality you were offered? I looked at Matthias, who was leaning back in his chair, a challenging look in his eyes. He didn't give me a hint. It was my test. I will use the most stable bulbs, Mr. Vasconcelos, I replied, looking directly at Arthur. They are of unparalleled quality. And they will be the focal point of Mr. Vasconcelos's garden, a demonstration of the fusion of beauty and control. Arthur smiled, victorious, and nodded. But then, Matthias leaned forward. Correct, Arthur, Matthias said, his voice full of triumph. Isla will use the bulbs you sent. She is transplanting them tomorrow onto my terrace. It's proof that, in the end, everything that is yours will become mine. Arthur froze, the victory disappearing from his face. He had lost again. His gift, his check for alliance, had only financed his brother's personal sanctuary. The meeting ended in a chilling atmosphere. Matthias escorted me out of the room, and a chill ran down my spine. You won, Matthias. But this is a dangerous game. It's the only game I know how to play. And you are my biggest trump card, Isla. He pulled me close, and his lips brushed my ear. Thank you for your loyalty. The price will be high. But the reward, I guarantee, will be much greater. He let me go, and I knew I was no longer just a consultant. I was his main weapon in the Vasconcelos War. The days that followed were dominated by construction. I was at the penthouse daily, managing Matthias's team and supervising the installation of Arthur's bulbs in their new raised flower bed. The climate-controlled storage area, which Matthias had called the guest bedroom, was now filled with peat, perlite, and tools. I was living and breathing Matthias's project. He, in turn, was incredibly present. He would come to the terrace after meetings, taking off his jacket and asking detailed questions about the soil layers or the resistance of the new seedlings. He no longer talked about Arthur, but his constant presence was a statement of territory and a form of intimate surveillance. At the end of the week, the structure of the suspended garden was completed. I had meticulously planted Arthur's parrot bulbs in a complex pattern, ensuring that the bloom, when it occurred in the spring, would be a controlled explosion of color. I was finishing insulating the last section of the raised flower bed when Matthias appeared, bringing 2 glasses of red wine. You're done, he observed, looking at the flower bed now covered with earth, awaiting winter dormancy. It's impressive. It looks like a work of art ready for hibernation. It's an engineering and botanical challenge, I said, accepting the wine. But they should survive the winter and bloom in the spring. You will have your resilient garden. He leaned against the railing, looking at the city below. I knew you could do it. You're the only one who understands the art of waiting for perfection. I understand dormancy, Matthias. It's necessary for strength. And you, Isla? What puts you in dormancy? I turned to him, surprised by the personal question. The fear of failure. The fear that 7 years of work will be destroyed by something I can't control. Like my brothers. Like your brothers, I agreed. There was a long silence, which was more intimate than any conversation. I owe you a real dinner, he said, turning to me. Not a trap dinner, but a celebration dinner. Tonight. In a place where no one from Phoenix will bother us. I'm tired, Matthias. I have to be at the farm before dark. I've already arranged for SCU Joao and the security team to take care of the farm. You're free. Consider it a contract decompression clause. He smiled. And I won't take no for an answer. You owe me the time I spent watching you plant. The restaurant was small, discreet, and cozy, in a neighborhood I barely knew. For the first time, Matthias seemed to be outside his element of power. He wasn't the CEO, he was just a man, and the difference was disarming. I wore my own dress, but he didn't even mention the green one. He asked me about my engineering course, about why I chose tulips, about how I got the land in the city. And for the first time, he listened to me, without interrupting me, without trying to dominate me. I chose tulips because they are a lie, I said, smiling slightly. They look delicate, but the bulb, the base, is made of pure resilience. You have to break the shell, freeze it, stress it, for it to bloom. They are strength disguised. You're talking about yourself, he observed. Perhaps. You are beauty born from stubbornness. I knew it from the first moment in your greenhouse. He leaned across the table. I don't handle uncertainties well, Isla. I build rigid structures to ensure predictability. And I am the chaos you can't predict. You are the only chaos I want to predict, he corrected. I need to know where you are, what you're doing. I need to know that you won't turn against me, like everyone else. You surround yourself with enemies, Matthias. That's not surprising. They're not enemies. They're my brothers. And now, you're in the middle. I know Miles visited you. I know he tried to seduce you with the promise of freedom. And I know Arthur tried to buy you with stability. But you chose my vision. I chose my future, Matthias. You were just the means. No. His eyes darkened, and the power returned to his voice, but this time, it was more personal. You chose to challenge me. You challenged me to prove I was worth it. And I fought for you, Isla. I fought for you against Arthur, against Miles, and against the rules of my family. I have never done that for anyone. The air between us was charged, more so than any business conversation. I'm not a prize to be won, Matthias. No. You are a necessity. He extended his hand across the table. The gesture was of submission to desire, not dominance. You are my strongest weakness. And I want more than a consultant, Isla. What do you want? I want you to show me your passion. I want you to show me what's underneath the dirt and the engineering plans. I want you, Isla. Not as a trump card, but as the only thing that makes me feel real. The confession was raw, direct, and took my breath away. I knew he was playing games, but there was a sincerity there that dismantled all my defenses. You are dangerous, Matthias. I am honest. I gave you my contract, my trust, and my future. Now, give me your truth. He stood up and extended his hand across the table. Let's go to my penthouse. Not for the garden. Just for the silence. And for you to show me what you want. I stood up. I knew I was crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed, that I was stepping into his crossfire by my own choice. But the challenge in his eyes, the vulnerability he had exposed, was irresistible. Yes, Matthias, I said, putting my hand in his. I want to see your silence. We left the restaurant. I was with the man who had threatened my business and who was now my biggest client, my biggest challenge, and, possibly, my greatest passion. The Vasconcelos game had become real. We returned to Matthias's penthouse, but this time, the atmosphere was neither business nor exhibition. The silence he had promised was heavy, broken only by the distant sound of the city and the slight noise of the wind on the terrace, where Arthur's bulbs slept under the insulated earth. He didn't turn on many lights, leaving the apartment enveloped in shadow. The hard lines of the modern architecture softened, and the place felt less like a corporate temple and more like a home, albeit a darkly elegant one. Matthias guided me to the living room. He took off his jacket and threw it over a leather sofa, unbuttoning his shirt at the collar. That casual gesture of stripping off his CEO armor heightened the electricity between us. Wine or something stronger? He asked, his voice low and husky. Wine, please. He poured the wine and handed me the glass. There was no rush, just a deliberate attention that was more intense than domination. He was watching me, waiting. You chose tulips because they are a lie, he repeated, returning to what I had said at dinner. Are you also a lie, Isla? I pretend to be strong and that I don't care about the dirt and the risk. But inside, I'm as fragile as any flower. I need control over my environment to bloom. And I am the man who is taking your control, but promising you something greater in return. He stepped closer. You challenged me to prove I was worth it, Isla. I accepted. What do you want me to prove now? I want you to show me that there is something more to you than control. Than the desire to beat your brother. What I feel for you has nothing to do with Arthur or Miles. He placed his wine glass on the side table and took a final step, closing the distance between us. The darkness in his eyes was absolute, but there was vulnerability there too, a surprising rarity. I saw you on your land, Isla. Dirty, determined, passionate. You are the exact opposite of my world, but you made me feel anchored. When you are around, the noise of Phoenix disappears. He raised his hand and placed it delicately on my cheek, in the same spot where he had wiped the dirt on that first day. The warmth of his skin was a shock. You are my only permitted point of uncontrol. I closed my eyes at the touch. I knew I was surrendering to a force that pulled me out of my safety zone, into the chaos of his desire. What if I don't want to be your uncontrol? What if I want the man who kisses me, not the CEO who inspects me? Then let me inspect every part of you, he murmured, and the night air seemed to grow warmer. Let me inspect the fire that is inside the florist. He tilted his head and, finally, he kissed me. It wasn't a possessive kiss like the one he had given on my shoulder or cheek. It was a slow, deep kiss that started with hesitation and quickly turned into a desperate hunger. Isla clung to his shirt, feeling the scent of cedar, power, and red wine. His kiss was a confession, a mutual surrender to the desire that had been fermenting since the moment he saw me in my muddy alley. He pulled me closer, and I felt the strong structure of his body against mine. His touch was the fusion of his professional control and his personal intensity. He was the man who demanded perfection in his floral arrangements, and he was kissing me with the same meticulous, ruthless attention. When he broke the kiss, we were both left breathless in the darkness. His eyes searched mine. I won't allow Miles to come near you, Isla. Nor Arthur to use you, he said, his voice rough. You are my weakness, and I am a man who protects his weaknesses with his life. I want you. Not as a trump card, but as the only truth in my world of lies. I knew what he was offering, an intense passion, but under the condition of his protection and dominance. Fear and desire fought a quick war inside me, but desire won. I want you too, Matthias, I whispered. But I'm not an item in your collection. You are my garden. And I won't allow anyone to touch my harvest. He kissed me again, a kiss that was a promise of possession, and I allowed myself to fall, abandoning the security of my earth and plunging into the burning chaos of his world. I knew I had just signed the most dangerous contract of my life, and the only clause was surrender to desire. The next morning was marked by a role reversal. Instead of waking up alone on my farm, I woke up in Matthias's penthouse. The bright morning sun, filtered through the wide glass windows, illuminated the room with an intense light. Matthias was awake, watching me with a quiet satisfaction that seemed more dangerous than his fury. He was leaning against the pillows, his dark hair tousled, stripped of his CEO armor. Good morning, Isla, he said, with a slow smile. You slept in my world. And your bulb bloomed. I felt my cheeks flush at the illusion, but I recomposed myself. I bloomed, Matthias. But I'm not a one-day flower. I'm a long-term harvest, and I'm not ready for your possession yet. He leaned in and brushed his lips against mine. It doesn't matter. You gave me your truth. And I protect what's mine. No one, not even Miles, will touch my garden. The comment about Miles brought reality back to the surface. Did you kiss me to protect your territory, Matthias? Or did you kiss me because you wanted me? Both, he replied, with his brutal honesty. I always wanted you. And the desire became urgent when I realized you were a political risk. I'm not a man who divides what he covets, Isla. From now on, the suspended garden is our secret, and our battlefield. And you are mine. I shook my head. I still have my farm, Matthias. And I am the only one who harvests my crop. Matthias drove me back to the farm in his armored car. His attention was now divided between Phoenix and my well-being. "I've organized your schedule so you work primarily from here," he said, as we drove through the gates. "You can oversee the greenhouse installation, and the material will be delivered directly to the penthouse for the arrangements. You will have my driver at your disposal, and I will monitor access." "You're isolating me." "I'm protecting you," he corrected, his tone firm. "You've attracted Arthur's attention and Miles's desire. They will use your property, your business, to get to me. You are safer near me." I knew he was right, but the feeling of having my personal freedom restricted was suffocating. "I have to go downtown today. I have a soil supplier meeting." He sighed, picking up his cell phone. "Jorge will take you and bring you back. And the security car will follow. It's non-negotiable, Isla. You are my most vulnerable point, and I will not allow you to expose yourself." The soil supplier meeting was in a busy cafeteria. I was sitting with my notebook, discussing pH levels, when my phone rang. It was a local number. "Hello, Isla. I see you managed to escape your bodyguard," said a voice I knew. "Miles." I looked outside. Miles was sitting at an outdoor table, smiling and waving. He was elegantly casual, and the difference from Mateus was striking. I looked at the door, my driver, Jorge, had his back turned, and the security car was around the corner. "How did you find me?" I whispered into the phone. "Mateus is predictable, Isla. He put a very obvious security car, and Mateus always uses the same type of cafeteria for discreet meetings. I'm not the heir, but I am the family's evasion strategist. Now, come have coffee with me. Mateus will have a heart attack if he finds out you ignored me." I knew Mateus was monitoring my cell phone and Jorge's location. If I moved, he would know. But if I stayed, Miles could cause a scene. I hung up the phone and stood up, pretending to be on a call. "I'll be back in a minute," I told my supplier. I walked to Miles's table, sitting in the vacant chair opposite him. "You're reckless, Miles," I said, my voice tense. "Mateus will know I'm here." "I know. And that's why I'm here. I need to warn you about the penthouse." He placed a small envelope on the table. "I know you're getting involved with Mateus. And that's not a problem. The problem is his penthouse. He bought it on purpose." "What are you talking about?" "The penthouse belonged to a former ally of Arthur's. Mateus bought it and completely renovated it. It's a statement of power against Arthur, and you're the centerpiece. But the security structure is a problem. Mateus installed a state-of-the-art system. I'm not talking about security. I'm talking about surveillance." Miles looked at me, the amusement disappeared from his eyes, revealing a seriousness I had never seen. "Isla, Mateus is a genius, but he's possessive. He installed a surveillance and listening system in the penthouse. It's not just to protect Phoenix. It's to protect you. From other intruders, and from himself." My stomach sank. Mateus's certainty, his protection, his need to know everything. Mateus is obsessed with control. He doesn't trust anyone. If you're thinking of having a relationship with him, you need to know that your suspended garden is a battlefield, and your bedroom is a surveillance chamber. You are lying. You're just trying to drive me away from him. I'm not. Check the envelope. It's the original blueprint for the wiring and sound system that he let me leak. I'm the only one who can do this without being caught. I'm not asking you to choose me, Isla. I'm asking you to protect yourself. Mateus will love you with the intensity of a hurricane, but he will keep you in a golden cage. I picked up the envelope, feeling the paper under my fingers. The information was devastating. Why are you helping me? Miles smiled, a sad smile. Because I love Matthias. And the only way to keep him anchored and sane is if he's forced to be honest. You're the only one who can force him to do that. And the only way you can do it is if you're aware of the price. Isla? Jorge's voice was in my earpiece. What's going on? The security car alerted me to a disturbance in the signal. I quickly stood up, sliding the envelope into my purse. I have to go, Miles. Think about it, Isla. Matthias will fight for you, but he will fight for your submission. You have to be stronger than his protection. I left quickly, returning to my meeting with a pounding heart. I was in Matthias's golden cage, and he held the keys. I spent the rest of that day in a state of cold shock. Miles's envelope, carefully hidden in my purse, was proof of Matthias's betrayal. The protection he offered me was not just a shield against his brothers, but a form of total surveillance. He didn't see me merely as his partner, but as his property to be monitored. Upon returning to the farm, I isolated myself in my office. I opened the envelope. Inside were technical sketches of wiring and microphones camouflaged in the penthouse's new sound and security system. The markings were clear: the master bedroom, the living room, and, most terrifyingly, the terrace itself where I was transplanting my life. Anger burned in me, overriding any remnants of desire I felt for him. Isla, the woman of the earth who cherished freedom, had been imprisoned by one man's obsession. I knew I couldn't confront him immediately. Matthias was dangerously intelligent. I needed a plan, and I needed to act with the same cold blood he used in his business. I had challenged him, and now he had raised the stakes for total submission. That night, I told Matthias I needed to work late at the penthouse to finalize the lighting installation for the raised flower bed. He didn't hesitate to agree. Great. I'll be in a board meeting, but Jorge will take you. You're safer there, he said, with satisfaction. I'll call in an hour to check on your progress. I arrived at the penthouse and dismissed Jorge with the excuse that I needed concentration. As soon as I was alone, I began my own inspection. Using Miles's blueprints as a guide, I went directly to the entertainment system in the living room. The diagram showed a microphone camouflaged inside a speaker. With the help of a small flashlight and a Swiss Army knife that I always carried for work in the greenhouse, I inspected the location. The tiny microphone was there, confirming Miles's warning. A wave of nausea hit me. Every whisper, every laugh, every intimate moment we shared in the living room had been recorded. I went to the master bedroom. Miles's diagram indicated a microphone and the designer lamp. I found it. I was in a golden cage, where even sleep wasn't private. I looked at the raised flower bed on the terrace. My sanctuary, built with Arthur's bulbs, was the location of the largest surveillance system. He had asked me to plant my life there, knowing he could hear every word, every sigh, in the silence of his garden. Instead of destroying the microphones, which Matthias would notice immediately, I decided to use them against him. I went back to the living room. I looked directly at the microphone location and started speaking loudly, adopting the casual, professional tone that Matthias so admired. Matthias, if you're listening. The insulation the engineering team installed on the terrace isn't enough. I found condensation points near the drain. This will generate fungus and rot Arthur's bulbs in less than a month. I paused, ensuring the information was digested. I'll need a team of high-level greenhouse climatization experts to correct this immediately. If it's not corrected by tomorrow, the risk is a total loss. I'm going to call my greenhouse engineer, Dr. Elias. He's the only one I trust to solve this. I hope you don't have a problem with that, Matthias. But if your garden dies, Arthur will have proof that you're reckless. Then, I went to the bedroom and repeated the message, adding a touch of panic. Arthur's bulbs, his gift, are in danger. I can't allow him to use this against you, Matthias. Dr. Elias has to come. I knew Matthias wouldn't hesitate to call the team. He was obsessed with control and wouldn't tolerate failure in his personal project, especially when it involved his brother's bulbs. The information was a business bait that he would swallow immediately. The phone rang almost immediately. Isla. What did you just say? Matthias's voice was low, tense, with ill-concealed fury. Fungus? Total loss? Yes, Matthias. I was inspecting the lighting and found a serious problem with the insulation. Moisture is accumulating. I called Dr. Elias. He can be here in the morning to inspect. But you need to authorize his hiring immediately. Don't call your engineer. I have a team. Why didn't you call me immediately? Why did I have to hear this through the internal communication? I called the team, Matthias. I'm your supplier, not your secretary. If you want me to protect your garden, you need to give me the authority to act. I don't have time to go through Lucia or your busy schedule. I kept my voice steady, injecting justified anger. And if you doubt my ability to protect your garden, maybe I should return the contract. He hesitated, the conflict visible in his voice. He knew he needed my judgment, and my professional ultimatum forced him to accept my terms. Don't return anything. I authorize the hiring of your Dr. Elias. He'll be at Phoenix tomorrow morning. But I want a full report on my desk by noon. And Isla. His voice quieted, becoming dangerous. You didn't tell me the truth about your whereabouts today. You met with Miles. I didn't flinch. I met with one of your competitors, Matthias. I needed to know what he was doing. I'm in the crossfire, and I need all the information. If you want me to be your partner, you need to give me the same trust you demand. I'm not a bulb you plant in the ground and wait to harvest. I'm the florist. And I'm the only one who knows how to take care of my own survival. You're reckless, he whispered. I'm honest, I corrected. And if you don't trust me, we can terminate the contract now. I trust you, he said, the tone of a man swallowing his pride. Dr. Elias is authorized. And tomorrow, you'll have to explain to me exactly what Miles wanted. He hung up. I knew he had accepted my terms because the risk of losing face to Arthur was greater than the risk of giving me authority. I had freed myself from surveillance, using the golden cage itself to take control. The real game had begun, and I was playing by his rules, but with my hand. The next morning was a meticulous choreography of strategy and lies. Matthias was tense, but focused on the threat to his garden. He arrived at Phoenix promptly, finding Dr. Elias, my trusted greenhouse engineer, already inspecting the terrace. Dr. Elias, Mr. Vasconcelos, I introduced them, maintaining a professional distance from Matthias. He was in a dark suit, and the contained fury from my challenge the night before hung over him. Dr. Elias was a practical man, with years of experience in intensive horticulture. He immediately confirmed the fungus threat to Matthias, using technical jargon that Matthias dared not question. The structural insulation is compromised in several critical areas, Mr. Vasconcelos, the doctor explained, pointing to the sides of the raised flower bed. The condensation here will fatally rot the bulbs by spring. It's a basic engineering error. We need to intervene immediately. Matthias looked at me, his jaw clenched. Correct it, Dr. Elias. The cost is irrelevant. Correcting the insulation is the first step, I interjected, taking control of the situation. But, to ensure the health of the plants, we need to monitor the environment. Dr. Elias, can you install a microclimate monitoring system to check the soil temperature and humidity, right? Of course, Isla. a discrete system, but with precise sensors embedded in the structure, the doctor agreed, following my implicit instructions. Discrete and with precise sensors. Exactly, I said, looking directly at Matthias. Matthias, for my peace of mind and the safety of your bulbs, I need this system. It ensures your resilient beauty survives. Matthias hesitated, but the need to protect his project and the urgency of Arthur's threat forced him to yield. Do whatever it takes, Dr. Elias. While Dr. Elias and his team prepared to begin the installation of the new monitoring system, I called the doctor aside. Doctor, the work I asked for is of extreme importance to my business, I whispered. I need your expertise not only in climatization, but in another system Matthias installed in the penthouse. I showed him Miles's diagram. The doctor, being a brilliant engineer, quickly understood the situation. Microphones camouflaged in the sound system and in the light fixtures. A primary security flaw, he said, shaking his head. Matthias can't know that I know, I explained. But he needs to be disarmed. What can we do? Dr. Elias smiled, an astute smile of someone who understood reverse engineering. The microclimate monitoring system is electronic. It requires a strong electromagnetic field to operate without interference. I will install a subtle, but constant, electromagnetic pulse that will temporarily neutralize any sensitive audio wiring within a 10-meter radius. It will look like casual interference from the new system. He won't notice anything, but his ears will be deaf. Can you do this in the bedroom and the living room? Throughout the entire apartment. Consider your cage deactivated, Isla. From now on, silence is your new ally. Matthias was waiting for me in his office, demanding the explanation about Miles. He was standing behind his massive mahogany desk, a general awaiting a battle report. Isla, your report on Miles. And be honest. I know he tried to plant you against me. I know he tried to break our alliance. He tried, yes, I said, sitting down, with a newfound calm. He warned me about Arthur and he warned me about your possessiveness. He said you're a man who builds golden cages. And that he would take me away from you. And what did you say? I told him that I am the only one who harvests my crop. And that I wouldn't abandon my future because of his family's games. Matthias studied me, trying to decipher my calmness. Did he give you any information I should know? I leaned across the desk, maintaining eye contact. He told me that you are a man who fears weakness. And that our relationship is your greatest vulnerability. He challenged me to prove I was worth fighting for. And you proved it. I proved it, Matthias. I met with him to get information. I am on the battlefield, and I am the only one who can defend myself. And I proved that my focus is on the survival of your bulbs, not the seduction of your brother. I just saved your face in front of Arthur. You challenged me to trust you, he said, his voice full of warning. And you challenged me to be resilient. I am being. I stood up and walked to his window. I am here, Matthias. I am planting your vision. But if you want my loyalty, you need to give me your trust. And you need to tell me the truth about what is behind your fear of Miles. Matthias looked away, a rarity. Miles is my opposite. He reminds me of everything I could have been if I hadn't inherited this company. He has the freedom, I have the responsibility. And he has a knack for involving himself with everything I cherish, just to prove that I am not invincible. And what do you cherish in me, Matthias? I cherish the chaos you represent. The fragility that demands protection, and the strength that challenges me. He approached, and I felt the weight of his desire, but this time, the threat of surveillance was gone. He was naked in his possessiveness. I gave you my trust. Now, Isla, tell me the truth. Did he try to kiss you? He didn't have time, I said, smiling slightly. But he left me a gift, the certainty that I am your greatest point of vulnerability. Which, if true, means you need me more than I need you. He pulled me into a kiss of surrender to my power, not of dominance. He was furious, possessive, but for the first time, he was blind to my true game. You are an earth witch, he murmured. You planted me in your game. And now, you have to harvest me. I smiled, knowing that, beneath the earth, my independence had bloomed. Dr. Elias had ensured my silence, and I had won the first battle against control. With the deactivation of the surveillance and Mateus's urgency to protect his garden, the dynamic between us subtly shifted. He remained present, but his possessiveness was now fueled by uncertainty, not by information. He was more attentive, trying to decipher my reactions and my loyalty without the help of his hidden ears. Dr. Elias's installation of the microclimate system had been successfully completed. The new system was elegant, with small temperature and humidity sensors incorporated into the raised flower bed, ensuring the health of Arthur's bulbs. I was at the penthouse supervising the final phase. Dr. Elias did an excellent job. The system is robust, Mateus said, observing the control panel that showed real-time readings. You saved my project, Isla. Arthur will no longer have reason to question your competence. I protected my work, Mateus. And my contract, I corrected. And you still haven't thanked me for my honesty about Miles. I thank you with actions. He turned to me. I've organized an event at the penthouse for the board and some senior directors tomorrow night. It's the official inauguration of the garden. And you will give the presentation. You won't just be the consultant, you will be the chief curator, the architect of our vision. Once again, using me as a weapon against Arthur? Yes. Mateus didn't hesitate. Arthur will see that your loyalty is anchored in Phoenix, and that you are a powerful force. It's time for you to make an official statement of your position. And what is my position? The only thing I protect with more intensity than Phoenix, he said, stepping closer. My choice. You will wear the green dress. And I want a flower display that symbolizes our commitment. The next morning, I dedicated myself to Mateus's arrangement. He wanted something that represented commitment. I decided it would be a composition of Rembrandt tulips, which symbolized beauty through uncertainty, and double early tulips, which represented fidelity. As I was assembling the arrangement in the farm's barn, Miles appeared again. This time, he didn't arrive in a sports car, but on a vintage bicycle, with a basket full of bread and cheese. Isla. I see you're no longer under my brother's overt surveillance, he observed, smiling. He must have accepted that you're too wild for his leash. I'm not on a leash, Miles. And I'm not in a position to receive surprise visits. I have an important event tomorrow. The inauguration cocktail party. I know. And I know the penthouse microclimate is working perfectly. Dr. Elias is a genius. The silence must be deafening for Mateus. I froze, looking at him. Are you testing me, Miles? I'm congratulating you. He leaned against the door frame. You used the information I gave you to neutralize the surveillance. You're smarter than he thought. And that worries me. Why does it worry you? Because now he's fighting in the dark. And when Mateus can't see, he becomes more aggressive and irrational. Isla, I'm here for a real reason. Arthur is planning to use tomorrow's event to discredit Mateus and, by extension, you. How? Arthur found a more established flower supplier, one that isn't rustic, and he's going to introduce his florist at the event. He's going to try to prove that Mateus made a poor investment in choosing you. He's going to use your fragility against Mateus. And what does that have to do with you? I don't want Mateus to lose control. And I don't want you to get hurt in the process. I have a gift for you. Not to buy your loyalty, but to ensure your survival at tomorrow's event. Miles handed me a small paper package. Inside, there was a small sprig of a rare flower, a deep blue, almost navy. What is this? It's a Tulipa caerulea. A blue tulip. They don't exist in nature, Isla. They are the result of extreme hybridization and pigmentation. They are the representation of what is impossible. It's beautiful. Use it in your commitment arrangement. Use it as your focal point. It will overshadow any flower Arthur brings. And, more importantly, it will give Mateus a psychological advantage. I looked at him, sensing the manipulation, but also the help. You want me to beat Mateus to keep him anchored. And you want me to beat Arthur to protect your family. You are the most charming manipulator I have ever met. I am the family's strategist, Isla. And you are my trump card. Use it. And if you need an escape route tomorrow night, call me. I will be your excuse. He said goodbye and rode away on his bicycle, leaving me alone with Mateus's secret and Miles's impossible blue flower. That night, I was back at the penthouse, wearing the green dress and the blue tulip. The presentation would be my coronation. I placed the Tulipa caerulea at the center of my double Early and Rembrandt arrangement. The impossible beauty of the deep blue was mesmerizing. Mateus appeared in the room, already in his tuxedo. His eyes scanned the dress, and he smiled with satisfaction. You chose the right armor. And the arrangement, he approached the table, his eyes fixed on the blue flower. What is that? It's a Tulipa caerulea, I said, keeping my voice calm. It doesn't exist in nature. It's the result of extreme control and art. I call it the impossible loyalty. Mateus looked at me, his expression indecipherable. He knew the flower was a lie, a construct, and that it was a powerful symbol. It's the boldest arrangement you've ever made, he said, picking up the flower and smelling it. You're promising something that doesn't exist, Isla. I'm promising you a vision that only I can deliver. And a commitment that will be tested. But, in the end, the strength is in the bulb, Mateus. Not the color. I love you, Isla, he murmured, his voice low, raw, and disarming. He had never said that before. I love your chaos and your challenge. And I will fight all of them to keep your impossible loyalty close. He kissed me, a deep and serious kiss. I knew he was surrendering to my manipulation. But, at the same time, I was surrendering to the strength of his passion. I was fighting for him, but fighting for myself too. Love in the Vasconcelos world was a battle, and I was ready to win. The inauguration cocktail party in Mateus's penthouse was my official debut in the Phoenix upper echelon, and Mateus ensured it was memorable. He was the personification of ruthless authority in his tuxedo, and I was his partner, wearing the green of his possessiveness. The impossible loyalty arrangement, with the deep blue tulip at the center, was strategically placed on a marble table. It drew attention, not just for the beauty of the flowers, but for the color that defied botany. Mateus introduced me with the same intensity he would introduce a new multi-million-dollar deal. This is Isla Braga, our chief curator. She is solely responsible for the vision of our new garden and Phoenix's arrangements. And she is the only one who understands the art of turning the impossible into reality. I smiled, playing my part. But my eyes sought Arthur. He appeared alongside an elegantly dressed woman, who was not the wife I had seen the first time. Arthur had the same calculating smile as always. Congratulations, Mateus, Arthur said, with cold courtesy. He turned to me. Ms. Braga. The arrangement is bold. A blue tulip. The absence of reality is an interesting concept for a corporate event. It's a symbol, Mr. Vasconcelos, I replied, maintaining my composure. It symbolizes the extreme commitment required to sustain excellence. It's not natural, but it is real in its determination. A well-rehearsed defense, Ms. Braga. But the excess of effort always reveals the fragility. At this moment, the woman with Arthur smiled. Excuse me, Isla. My name is Sophia. I am the owner of Florinobra. I supply the arrangements for most of the city's galas and executive headquarters. Sophia handed me a card. She was the supplier Arthur was using as a counterblow. Your work is beautiful, Isla. But at Florinobra, we focus on what is timeless. And on security. Sophia gestured to a small arrangement on a nearby table, a classic bouquet of white garden roses. What your tulip arrangement fails to demonstrate is stability. Tulips, like young ladies, are beautiful, but they wilt quickly and require excessive care. The comment was a double slap, hitting my work and my role as Mateus's volatile choice. Mateus stepped forward, his jaw clenched, ready to attack. But I subtly raised my hand. It was my moment to prove I was more than his possession. Sophia, I said, smiling sweetly. Your arrangement is timeless, indeed. But it's a cliché. Roses are the safe choice, the beauty that has nothing to prove. I leaned towards the table. My tulips are a challenge. They demand skill, timing, and care to bloom at the right time. They are the strength that emerges from dormancy. I pointed to the blue tulip in my arrangement. And this Tulipa carolia, I said, with conviction. It is proof that with the right vision, it is possible to create something that is rare, valuable, and that defies all the rules of nature. Your arrangement is the past, Sophia. Mine is the future. The blow was direct. Mateus smiled, a dark smile of victory. Arthur's anger was palpable. He had underestimated me. The battle of the flowers was won, but then Miles appeared. He was impeccable in a tailored suit and came straight to me. Isla. You're shining. The blue matches your courage, he said, taking my hand and kissing it theatrically. Mateus tensed, the possessiveness returning to his face. Miles. Don't interrupt our chief curator, Mateus said, his voice low with warning. I'm not interrupting. I'm appreciating. Isla, I just saw your new garden on the terrace. It's stunning. But you missed a crucial viewpoint. Miles looked directly at Mateus. Isla, did you know that the balcony next to the terrace was where Mateus used to have his most discreet meetings? Mateus, are you going to continue using the adjacent balcony for business meetings? Or does this new purity extend to all the penthouse's annexes? The implication was clear, Mateus wasn't as pure in his commitments as he tried to appear, and his new partner was in the dark about his past. The board members' eyes turned to Mateus. Mateus was furious. Miles, this is not the time. It's the perfect time, brother. Isla is your partner. She has the right to know about the peculiarities of the workplace, including the balcony that, apparently, hasn't yet been deactivated for the new Phoenix vision. Miles was using me to break Mateus's image. I turned to Mateus, keeping my expression neutral. He had to choose, defend himself or defend me. Mateus, it's a matter of professionalism. Is what Miles is saying true? Mateus looked at Miles, a silent threat. Then, he turned to me, the anger in his eyes, but forcing the truth. It's the adjacent balcony, Isla. It's a space I use to close confidential deals. The lie was obvious. The balcony was where he met his lovers, and Miles was exposing his past in front of everyone. I understand, I said, coldly. Matthias, then I need the balcony to extend my raised flower bed. It has the best evening light. Let's deactivate it from its confidential deals immediately. Arthur, if you could provide the structural blueprint for the balcony, it would be a great help. I used Miles's challenge and Matthias's lie to expand my domain. I was claiming his space. Arthur was surprised, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of admiration in his eyes. Matthias smiled, a smile of acceptance of my move. I hadn't defended him, but I had fought for my expansion. The balcony is hers, Arthur, Matthias said. Isla Braga needs space to bloom. The cocktail party ended with my victory and my newly expanded territory. Matthias led me back to my arrangement, and he was furious and fascinated at the same time. You didn't defend me, Isla. You used me to expand your domain. I used your vulnerability to strengthen our alliance. And now, the balcony is mine. And Miles will no longer have a way to use me against you. Are you satisfied, Matthias? Extremely, he whispered, and the desire in his eyes was more intense than ever. You are the only woman who has ever fought for my territory, Isla. And you will pay for that audacity. Despite the victory at the cocktail party, the night ended with a palpable tension. Matthias didn't touch me, but his attention was suffocating. The expansion of the garden to the side balcony, the former location of his discreet meetings, was a masterstroke, but also an act of hubris that he would make me pay for. The next morning, he called me from Phoenix. Arthur is beside himself. You not only refuted Sophia, but you claimed the balcony. You publicly humiliated him, he said, with cold satisfaction. Phoenix is issuing a statement about your ascension to Director of Strategic Botany. Director? Matthias, I'm a florist. You are my partner in the vision of the Empire. The title is to neutralize Arthur. It gives you the power to demand the structural blueprint for the balcony. I sent a new consulting contract with the new title. The salary is doubled. You're trying to buy me, Matthias. I'm giving you the tools to maintain your expansion. The new title requires you to have an office inside Phoenix. I've prepared the 43rd floor for you. You will move there next week. I hesitated. An office at Phoenix was a huge power move, but it took me away from my Earth. I won't leave my farm. You don't have to. You can alternate. But, for the security of Phoenix, the Director of Strategic Botany needs to be at the center of command. And, Isla, you are safer near me. I can't protect my garden if you're an hour away. I knew he was right. The farm was vulnerable. I was being pulled into the center of his web, but he was giving me the power to do it. Fine, Matthias. I accept the office and the title. But I design my own space. No microphones, and with windows that open. Your space is yours, Isla. I trust your design. And about the balcony. I need you at the penthouse tonight. To inspect the water lines. The project is urgent. The project wasn't urgent. What was urgent was his need to have me close. I arrived at the penthouse after work, and found Matthias relaxed in the living room. He looked me up and down. I was in jeans and a t-shirt, dirty with earth from a bulb planting. You are the only woman who can leave the farm and look so desirable, he said, with a slow smile. I don't mind the dirt. I'm not desirable, Matthias. I'm a botanical director. Where is the plumber? The plumber just left. I was just waiting for you. He stood up and walked toward me. The waterline inspection is now. Come. He led me to the master bedroom, where the side balcony connected. The sliding glass door leading to the balcony was open. The water line needs to be diverted to the new raised flower bed, he explained, pointing to the floor. I want the final project finished before the end of the month. And I want you to show me your expansion plan, Isla. I knelt on the floor to examine the slab, tracing the imaginary lines for the new structure. Matthias knelt behind me, so close that I felt the warmth of his body and the scent of his cologne. Here, I said, without turning my head. We need to insulate the slab to prevent water leakage into the unit below. That's the most crucial part. He wasn't looking at the slab. He was looking at the back of my neck. You have a structural plan for everything, Isla. But do you have a plan for us? He whispered, his voice low and husky. Our plan is our contract. And Phoenix's security. He slid off his suit jacket, and I felt his breath in my hair. He gently turned me around, and I was trapped between him and the balcony. The contract is concluded. Isla, I told you I loved you. And you gave me your truth. Now, I want your surrender. I will no longer settle for your professional coldness. You are a dangerous man, Matthias. And I am not your submissive. I don't want submission. I want trust. He touched my lips with his thumb. You used Miles and Arthur to manipulate me, and I accepted. You deactivated my surveillance, and I accepted. You took my most intimate space, and I accepted. I gave you the power, Isla. Now, give me your weakness. Tell me you want me as much as I want you. I want you, I whispered, the resistance disappearing. But your control suffocates me. Then breathe, he murmured, kissing me. The kiss was the fusion of his desire and his acceptance of my strength. He pulled me up, and held me with the same possessive strength he used to protect his empire. I am not a cage, Isla. I am your refuge. And our contract is our alliance, not your imprisonment. He carried me into the bedroom, and the sun set over the city. I was at the center of his power, dirty with earth, kissing the man who was my greatest threat and my most exciting future. The garden was expanding, and my dominion over it was being cemented. The following days were an intoxicating mix of relentless work and secret passion. I moved between the farm and Phoenix, dividing my time between the earth and the skyscrapers. Matthias had turned the 43rd floor into an elegant laboratory for me, and I was fully engaged in the plans for expanding the garden to the balcony. Our relationship, driven by Matthias's intensity and my constant challenge, was my new point of uncontrol. He kissed me with the same urgency he discussed soil viability, and every touch was an affirmation of possession that I, surprisingly, no longer rejected. However, the calm did not last. Arthur, silenced but not defeated, was preparing his final move. I was in my new Phoenix office, reviewing the budgets for the balcony expansion, when Arthur's secretary called. Mr. Vasconcelos would like to meet with you in his office, Ms. Braga. Now. It wasn't an invitation, it was a summons. Matthias was out, in an emergency meeting with the board about the port deal. I was alone in enemy territory. I took the elevator to Arthur's office. He was in a sober, classically lined room, the opposite of Matthias's cold minimalism. Arthur was sitting behind his desk, and there was no cold smile on his face, only somber seriousness. Sit down, Director Braga, he said, with a sarcastic tone in the title. I won't take up too much of your time. Matthias is fighting a tough battle with the board, and I'm sure he'd prefer you to be ready for his return. I'm listening, Mr. Vasconcelos. I've been observing your ascension. You refuted Sophia and claimed the balcony. You are proving to be a much smarter adversary than I thought. And that brings me to the point. He took a folder from his drawer. I don't care about your personal relationship with Matthias. I care about Phoenix. He opened the folder. Here are the documents. The board is divided on the port deal. Minority shareholders are skeptical of the investment. They see Mateus as reckless, risking too much on new markets. And what does that have to do with my tulips? It has to do with your loyalty. Mateus is risking Phoenix for you, Ms. Braga. He doubled your salary, gave you a director title, and allowed you to destroy his old penthouse office for a garden. He is showing a lack of judgment that compromises his position as CEO. He slid a document across the table. It was a formal memo from the board, citing concerns about Mateus's reckless asset management and personal distraction. The board is pushing for a co-management structure to ensure stability. I am being considered the co-manager. This would strip Mateus of his decision-making power. And he would lose total control of the empire. What does this have to do with me? My ultimatum is simple, Ms. Braga. I don't want your contract. I don't want your farm. I want Phoenix. And to ensure the succession, I need to eliminate Mateus's point of uncontrol. Arthur looked directly at me. If you publicly terminate your contract with Phoenix and return to your farm, I can use that as proof that Mateus, shamed, is acknowledging his error in judgment. This would give the board the necessary stability to keep Mateus as CEO, but under control. If you stay, the board will consider that proof that he is obsessed. He will lose control. You're asking me to betray him to save him. I'm asking you to sacrifice your new empire to protect his. Mateus won't let you go, Isla. He will fight for you until he loses control. But you can choose surrender to ensure he maintains power. You have 48 hours to make your move. I left Arthur's office, feeling sick. The game was real. I could feel the weight of the Vasconcelos empire. I returned to my office, and my phone rang. It was Miles. You just left Arthur's office, didn't you? He asked, without preamble. He gave you the ultimatum. How do you know everything? I'm not the heir, Isla. I'm the shadow. I know everything. And I know Arthur is willing to destroy Phoenix to gain control. He asked me to leave. To save Mateus. Don't trust Arthur, Miles said, his voice full of warning. If you surrender, Arthur will use you as proof of Mateus's weakness and take control anyway. You won't save him, you'll put him in Arthur's cage. What should I do, Miles? Mateus is fighting for everything. You don't save him with surrender. You save him with victory. Mateus needs you to be his shield, not his sacrifice. Isla, the board is meeting tomorrow. You have to go to the meeting and give your own speech. You have to prove that you are not Mateus's weakness, you are his strength. You have to sell his vision. I'm a florist. I'm not a financial director. You are the director of strategic botany. You are the only one who can see the beauty in uncertainty. Go and tell them that investing in Phoenix is like planting tulips. It requires risk, it requires patience, but the harvest is the rarest beauty. Miles gave me the battle plan. I couldn't surrender. I had to fight. I looked at my new office, at my desk, at my life that Mateus had given me. I loved him, but I loved my new strength even more. I wouldn't be anyone's sacrifice. I would be his defense. I called Mateus. He was tense, but focused on his meeting. Isla. I can't talk. The board is slaughtering me. Mateus. Listen to me. I'm entering your battlefield tomorrow. I'm going to fight for you. But you have to give me the authority to speak. You have the authority. Isla, I love you. But I can't lose this empire. You won't. I'll fight for your empire. But you have to give me your complete trust. You have it. Whatever you do, I follow you. But you have to win. I hung up. I was going to fight for my impossible loyalty and for the man who taught me to love uncertainty. The final harvest would be mine. The morning of the board meeting dawned gray, but I felt a frosty clarity. I knew I was about to enter Phoenix's control room, not as a florist, but as Mateus's only defense. I wore the green dress, not as his armor, but as my own uniform of command. I arrived at the boardroom on the 50th floor, where the board, composed of men and women in suits representing the old guard and the future of the empire, was gathered around a massive mahogany table. Mateus was tense, but nodded in recognition. Arthur was seated at the front, a folder in hand, exuding controlled calm. Director Braga, finally, Arthur said, with polished sarcasm. I hope your speech is more grounded in finance than in botany, Isla. The board is ready for the vote. I walked to the table, ignoring Arthur and looking directly at the board members. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. I am Isla Braga, Director of Strategic Botany for Phoenix, and I am responsible for Mr. Vasconcelos's long-term vision. And I am here to talk about the value of uncertainty and the necessity of risk. I maintained a firm posture, but my voice was calm and engaging. Mr. Vasconcelos is being accused of recklessness for investing in new markets and for choosing me, a rustic supplier. But what you see as risk, I see as resilience. I walked to the window, from where the city sprawled out in a concrete map. Phoenix's empire is like a crop. If you keep planting the same seed, the same old garden rows, the harvest will be predictable, but weak. To generate the rarest beauty and value, you need a tulip strategy. Arthur tried to intervene. Ms. Braga, we are not discussing flowers. We are discussing the strategy of uncertainty, Mr. Vasconcelos. I cut him off, looking at him firmly. The Rembrandt tulips, which are the most valuable, are the result of a viral mutation. They are not stable, but their beauty is immeasurable. Mr. Vasconcelos is investing in the port, in new markets, in something that requires risk, yes, but that will yield the greatest profit. And your role? Asked an older board member. My role is isolation. I am the buffer against the zero-risk mentality. The suspended garden, which was the point of contention, is the metaphor. Mateus is investing millions to create an improbable ecosystem on the 40th floor, with tulips that should die from altitude. But he is doing this because he understands that, with the right insulation and the necessary expertise, strength emerges where there is uncertainty. He chose me because I understand the art of turning danger into rare beauty. I pulled the small sprig of the Tulipa carolia that Miles had given me from my pocket. The blue flower looked unreal under the cold lights of the room. This is the impossible loyalty. It does not exist in nature. It is the result of extreme intervention. What Mateus is doing is not recklessness, it is curation. He is creating an empire where controlled risk generates impossible value. Mateus looked at me with an intensity that was a mix of pride and love. He understood that I was selling his vision, but with my own truth. Mateus's empire is strong, but it needs uncertainty to bloom, I concluded. And I am here to ensure he has the strength to accept that risk. Your vote is not about the port, it's about whether you want the predictable growth of the garden rose, or the extraordinary harvest of the rare tulip. The silence that followed was the most gratifying of my life. Arthur, realizing that my move had turned the tide, tried one last blow. Ms. Braga, you are using the speech to deflect the fact that you are a conflict of interest. Your personal relationship with the CEO is a weakness. Mateus stood up, taking his place beside me, and I felt the weight of his power. Isla's relationship with me is the opposite of weakness, Mateus said, his voice full of unwavering authority. It is my strength. She challenges me to be a better leader and to accept calculated risk. I love her, and I will not concede my vision or my partner. The vote is about my judgment. And I have full confidence in Director Braga's judgment. The vote was concluded. The co-management motion was rejected by a narrow margin. Mateus maintained total control of Phoenix. Mateus pulled me out of the boardroom. In the hallway, he held me with a possessive force. You saved me. You gave me the victory, Isla. You fought for my empire, and you won. I fought for my expansion, Mateus. And for your bulb. And I am no longer your vulnerability. No, he murmured, kissing me with a passion that celebrated partnership and desire. You are my empress. The harvest is ours. 6 months later, Phoenix's suspended garden was at its peak. Arthur's parrot bulbs bloomed in a controlled explosion of colors, a symbol of Mateus's victory and my ascension. I was on the terrace, examining the tulips, when Mateus approached. He watched me with the same intensity as the first day, but now, there was mutual trust. The garden is perfect. Isla, you've transformed my former battlefield into a sanctuary, he said. It's our sanctuary. And the balcony is fully planted with my Queen of the Night. It's a constant reminder that the domain is mine too. Miles appeared, climbing the terrace stairs. He wore a smile of someone who knows a secret. Congratulations on the success, Mateus. The garden is proof that you needed chaos to bloom. He turned to me. Isla, the blue tulip worked perfectly. I'm glad you chose victory. And I'm going to Europe. For a few years. Watch out for games, Miles, I said, smiling. I will be the Empire's shadow. But you, Isla, you are the center. Miles said goodbye and left, leaving us alone. Mateus hugged me from behind, looking at the horizon. Arthur is calm. He's focused on business and has accepted your power. And I, Isla, am addicted to you. And I to you. But remember, Mateus. I still have my farm, and I still have my own roots. I know. He kissed my neck. And that's why I bought the land next to your farm, Isla. So that my garden can be next to yours, but you never have to feel imprisoned. He had bought the land so I could expand Flor de Cidade. Not to control it, but to protect it. I was no longer the possession, I was the partner. I love you, Mateus, I said, turning to him. But if you install microphones there, I will plant you in the ground. I don't need microphones. I need your smile, he said, and kissed me, sealing our contract of love and uncertainty. The harvest of our new empire had only just begun, and it would be bolder and rarer than either of us could have imagined. The end.